All right, well, let's get started. So at 6:01, we will call the meeting to order. Luann, do you have public input?
I do have public input. Were you doing the pledge first or no?
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you for the reminder. It's not
Sure.
on the agenda, so I tend to forget if it's not written down.
No
So
problem.
anyone wishing to do so, I will share my screen. We have a photo. Right. Tim, can you see a flag?
Yes.
All right. Anyone wishing to do so, please, you can rise and join Tim in the Pledge of Allegiance. Tim?
I'm sorry, I did not know that I was muted. Let me do it again. I
Okay.
pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance to
flag
the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
one
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Ideally.
Thank you, Tim. All right, so just a reminder, anyone not speaking, please mute your lines to avoid feedback. Luann, please read public input.
Okay, sure. The first public input is from John Rowan, who is a frequent patron at the library. This was in response to a recent e-news that was sent out. He said there was mention in the e-news about a head count restriction and how many people could come into the building. That would be a very good thing to explain in a future email. If a working taxpayer comes by with a time crunch and is then told they have to wait outside, that will diminish the goodwill towards the library. And then we have, and we corresponded back and forth, and I told him that, we would clarify that, make that clearer. And then we have some comments and suggestions from our curbside room. Some are signed, some are not signed. Someone wrote, "Thanks for the great job." This is from Dara Rebus. "Is there any way to increase the checkout time for DVD box sets? There are multiple DVDs per box set and can take a few weeks to watch a series. Thank you." This one's not signed. It says, "The library and its staff are amazing. In fact, I truly believe you've done the work of angels by serving the community during COVID. Thank you. Thanks for doing all you can for the patrons during the pandemic and construction. Soon, 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 we will be able to go back to normal. Looking forward to an improved GPL." Another, "Keep up the great work. Please put a low handicap checkout desk at circulation. Thanks for doing a great job." And the person signed it, but I can't read it. "I think you have done an amazing job with all of your, I think it says construction. Thank you." Someone else wrote, "A traffic light on Western Avenue. Number 2, a cafe." And finally, we have enjoyed curbside service. All staff have been most helpful in accommodating our requests since we do not have internet access. We are thankful for the updates and looking forward to the opening for browsing as well as use of computers. Kudos to all who have made such positive adjustments throughout COVID and construction. In other words, thank you. GPL is indeed worthy of the phrase, the meeting place." And that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Luann. I have public comment that I received via letter at my home today, and it is from an anonymous staff member. On behalf of the most, if not all, of the GPL staff, please add a human resources professional to our staff. Now is the time to get this done. With Margaret and Carol both retiring, we are counting on you. Here's what it's been like for as long as I've worked at the library, which is several years. We encounter frequent problems with our paychecks, whether it's dollar amounts, deductions, time accrued, retirement, you name it. We do not have any sort of confidence it is done correctly. And when you point it out, you get no apology, just attitude. More than that, even though we have the union, we have not had an HR person that treats employees fairly, without favoritism and bias, and confidentially. Nothing is treated confidentially. It is really terrible. At least we have CSEA for support.
Point of order.
Yes.
So I also received this letter. And while there are questions and concerns that the person raises that we should definitely discuss, I would prefer that this letter not be continued to be read, as it's going to specifically mention 2 current employees, and I just don't think it's appropriate. So
I would echo Peter's point of order. I think public comment is supposed to be submitted to the library via a specific method according to our bylaws. And I don't think comments sent to an individual board member are qualified to be raised at the board meeting. I may be wrong.
So let me ask, the letter is addressed to the Public Library Board of Trustees. Have all board members received a copy of this letter? Okay, Michael has not yet. Tony has, Vanessa has, Narina has not. Richard has. Barbara, have you received this letter?
I received it, but we normally
Okay.
don't read anonymous letters.
So, Noreen, have you received this letter?
I'm sorry, I just joined.
Sure. Did you receive a letter addressed to the Public Library Board of Trustees?
Yes.
Okay. So far we're missing Michael. Marcia, have you received the letter?
Oh.
Okay.
Can I just ask, when was this received? When did most people get this letter?
I
Today.
received it today.
today.
Oh, I haven't been
So-
home yet today, so.
Yep.
I haven't actually, before I say no, I haven't checked the mail, so I really,
Okay.
I don't know.
So
Is this
it
through the
is-
mail? Is this?
Yes,
sorry, is this-
postal service. Yes.
I haven't
okay.
gone through my mail yet.
Peter, I will agree with you. I, was unsure if everyone received the letters. I have occasionally been the only board member that's received letters at my home to be read at the meetings. So this does specifically mention employees, and since all the board members have received it, at this point, I will not continue to read it into the record. But I would like to touch base with Michael and Narina and Marcia, by no later than tomorrow afternoon, to make sure that you have received it. And should you have not received it, I can make sure a copy is made available to you.
Thank you very much, Caitlin.
You are welcome, Peter. Let me just make notes on who I need to follow up with on this. Okay. That being said, Tim has some conversation or some things to update us on personnel and the soon-to-be vacated positions. So we will move on to the construction update. I believe it's just Megan on the call today.
Yes, you just get me this evening, and I should be fairly brief with only good news. So I will share my screen. Just bear with me for one moment. All right, so as we discussed at the last meeting, a majority of the construction has been completed. The past few weeks, the contractors have been on site as needed to complete punch list work. There are still some outstanding items, but a majority of the work has been addressed. They've also been submitting their closeout paperwork, which includes, owner's manuals, maintenance instructions, and such. Lou and the staff have been receiving training on some of the systems. So construction-wise, we are in the home stretch. Also, in the past 2 weeks, the shelving and a majority of the furniture have been delivered and installed. Starting at the end of last week, Clancy Collection Relocation was on site to shift the collections and unbox collections down to the new shelving. There was some millwork completed and some new millwork installed, and I've got some images. So that's the children's help desk, and one of the punch list items was the glass walls, which has now been installed. The barn entryway for the toddler playroom. So overall, there's been much progress in the past few weeks, and we're optimistic that the remaining punch list items will be addressed shortly, and the library can settle back into business as usual. In terms of budget, we continue to maintain the budget we established last fall after we had opened bids, so we're just continuing to spend as anticipated. We have just a small balance left to pay out on the contracts. We've added a little bit to the finished floor purchase, and that we've recently purchased new carpeting for the Helderberg room to replace that existing carpeting. We're continuing to pay soft costs for design fees, inspections, still anticipating legal fees and things like that as we close out the bond. I think we've placed just about all of our furniture orders now. The technology has been ordered and a majority of it is installed, and we have a few miscellaneous expenditures as expected, and we still continue to remain under budget. So that is my overall update for tonight. I'm really here for questions too, if you have any, as I know we're anticipating opening next week. Tim and myself and some contractors have been working on getting the temporary certificate of occupancy issued from state ed, so that everything is in order. Any questions or any other updates I can give?
Barbara has a question.
Oh, sorry, I can't see.
That's okay. I just have a question on my recollection of the original drawing view from the road as you face the library. Right now, all that you see is the bunch of metal signs sort of stacked up along the sidewalk. And I thought that there were going to be some trees or bushes planted along that sight line, to make it a little bit prettier. Are those still in the works, or do I not remember the original drawing correctly?
You may be correct. We held off on doing plantings too much on Western Avenue because the sidewalk project has not been completed that the town was doing, and we didn't want to install anything that would be damaged or killed by their work.
I thought it was along that strip from the road to the library where there was going to be sort of like a canopy of trees.
Oh, I'm sorry, in the parking lot area.
Yes.
In the end, to maintain the number of parking spaces, that central island isn't really wide enough for trees to sustain trees. We had hoped to, but after doing the math for the required distance for a parking space, the travel lanes and such, the island is a little bit narrow. Even with specifying a tree that has roots that grow more vertically than horizontally, we were concerned that that island would be too narrow to really sustain it because we have the sidewalk in the center.
Okay. As I said, the big criticism that our architect had was that there was nothing in the way of curb appeal bringing you to the library, and the drawings look beautiful that, you would have this canopy of trees, but if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Are there other questions?
Can I comment?
Tim, if you'd like to, and I see a question from Michael as well.
Okay, why don't we let Michael go first?
Yeah, I had a question. Maybe this may be, water under the bridge now and not worth spending much time on, but I was curious about the pushback of the soft open, which had originally, on the schedule we'd been presented with back in July had projected a soft open around the 8th. And then that subsequently got moved back to the planned soft open this week, and then that got moved back and then eventually eliminated. And the reason I ask is because back in July, there was a question asked by one of the board members at the meeting about, were there any risks, that would delay the, the anticipated schedule that would further push things back or cause it not to occur according to the schedule. And at the time, the thought was that everything had been anticipated, that there were no risks outstanding that might push things back. And so I wondered what it was, what was it that we failed to anticipate, or that that ended up causing things to take longer than they did.
A majority of the delay was the shelving production. The manufacturer whom we had used via state contract to purchase the shelving units from really just couldn't meet the demand. They had originally said that they could have everything produced by the end of July. Then they needed extra time and they needed till the end of August. And then they kept sort of, promising they could get everything in. And then eventually they started just shipping piecemeal sets of, 15 or 40. So we were unable to get everything in the timely manner that they had stated that they could do. And unfortunately, we really didn't have much leverage to demand that they produce things. They're a local business out in Herkimer, Utica area, and they had some setbacks with their plant and then some COVID outbreaks. So, and just the same struggles that most contractors are facing right now with material availability and such. But so it was unforeseen and it was really frustrating. And in fact, I asked them when I thought the meeting was last week to come to the meeting and tell you guys directly why their shelves weren't on site, but the meeting was pushed this week and now they're all here and things are settling in. That was the reason. It was the shelving and getting it all in and in place before opening, because even just as of Monday, there was all of the new shelving, all of the temporary shelving, and Clancy's collection relocation trucks, and it was just sort of mayhem with almost no floor space to walk around.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, we needed to delay, but I think now we've got everything in its place and you should have a successful opening and clear walkways.
So I would like to follow up if I can, Caitlin.
Yes, I also see Vanessa has a virtual hand raised.
Okay, if I may, Vanessa, I'd like to go now because it's a little bit germane to Mike's question as well.
Absolutely, go ahead, please.
Okay, so literally from last Thursday, the 16th to tonight, it's really been astonishing. You could not find a staff member or anyone else in the building who thought we would do what we did in the last week. So we were literally receiving shipments of furniture, building the furniture, unpacking the collections and shelving almost in like a 4 subcontractor assembly line. And the place was literally kind of an unholy mess. Our experts like Megan and so forth kept saying, have faith, it will all come together, it will all come together. But in particular, Mike, one thing you referenced was the cancellation of the soft opening hours this week. We had planned for 20 of those hours, and you were one of several people who had volunteered to assist a little bit with that, and we thank everyone who volunteered. But literally until basically lunchtime today, it was still basically an unsafe environment to bring anyone into. And there is a small amount of electrical work that'll be going on tomorrow that prevents us. Technically, we could probably do some soft opening hours tomorrow, but we never announced them. And we've now told the staff that, we're not going to do that. And they've absorbed that, and to give them another case of whiplash and reopen for unannounced off hours tomorrow could cause as many problems as it could abate. One that we were always concerned about was that the patrons who found themselves by surprise in the brand new library would certainly take photos and post them on social media. And then when the unannounced off opening hours stopped on Saturday and Sunday, they'd be a little upset when they came by. So we just made the decision on the fly to just go to the Monday morning at 9:30 opening. But even yesterday, I had my doubts. And still, for example, the Helderberg room it's a danger zone. You know, it's going to have to be closed off because it was a staging area for most of the work going on this week. There were 7 contractors in the building this week, all week. I don't know how many might be here tomorrow, but not as many. So we're in good shape.
Thanks, Tim. Vanessa?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Megan and Tim, to the extent that you know, what work, if any, you expect to be happening in the building next week. Do we expect any contractors to remain or straggling work?
Next week, there will still be some electrical work, but it will likely be contained to the Helderberg room as they're still replacing those light fixtures. Anything else that would need to happen in the public areas will now be staged or done prior to library opening, so between 7 and 9:30 a.m., so that there won't be any patron or interference. I know, like, there's still a piece of glass missing from the glass wall in the children's room that's supposed to be delivered first thing Monday morning and set before 9:30. So there'll be some things like that, but the contractors now know that once the building opens, they've got limited time to access the building.
Another example, Megan, and there's so much on our plates, but another example is the installation of graphics at the front entryway, which we hope will take place tomorrow and Saturday. And then the installation of graphics on the large wall above the fish tank that we think will be at some point in the future that we haven't yet established. And there's a little bit of painting here and there and so forth, but most of that is wrapped up. All technology was installed this week, as far as I know. But it's little kind of punch list details at this point.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. We'll move on to the design committee report from Kathy Barber.
I don't have too much. I only have notes from the latest meeting, 9:15. We had a very small change order, $785 to troubleshoot electrical box, which was clipped by, I think, a snowplow in the staff parking lot, and the snowplow people are going to fix it. And I know there's a lot of there was some talk about some outlets, 8 outlets, or 10 outlets, and I think we had some numbers on that came in after the meeting. Then we had some other. We talked about the design of the different aspects of the library, the design of the doors to different rooms, and I know we also did that. We got a few more things about that by email because the staff had weighed in on what the design should look like, and I think we all liked it as a committee. And if anyone else has anything to add, because I know I missed one of the meetings because I was on vacation. So I'm sure I missed things. So if any of the other committee members have anything to add, or Megan, about things that we, other change orders.
I just clarified the conversation we had at the last committee meeting that we were finalizing was about potentially adding floor outlets in the Helderberg room because we're replacing the carpet at this time. It seemed like an opportune time to, when the carpet tile is removed, trench the floor and put in floor boxes in the center of the area so that when there are programs and events in that large meeting room, that there aren't extension cords running from the walls, but rather the power's more centrally located for tables or podiums and such, so that there's less trip hazards and more flexibility in the space. So that was our conversation about floor outlet.
Megan, can you remind me and tell everyone when we expect to do that work now?
We approved it, I believe, yesterday. So I don't have a timeline. They were getting, they knew we wanted it done as soon as possible. They were getting availability from the subcontractor and letting me know. Probably tomorrow I should have that answer. Sorry.
I think it's also, I think this would be a good point in the meeting for me, if you don't mind, Caitlin, to summarize a concern about the certificate of occupancy related to the project. Megan, are you okay if I'm the one who does that? Or?
You're the boss.
Well, actually, there's 11 bosses present, great attendance tonight. But the certificate of occupancy is not quite ready. And if we don't have it by Monday morning at 9:30, then we can't open from an insurance perspective. So Megan is working with her contact at State Ed, and I'm working with Guilderland's Office of Fire Prevention. And we had an inspection yesterday. We were given some items to clear up. We've cleared most of them up and we'll finish the rest of them tomorrow. So the Guilderland office has given us the piece of paper they need to give us. We then need to get, and I'm a little hazy on the details, either the school district or the BOCES to upload it to State Ed, where Megan has been assured that this piece of paper will do and will serve as a temporary certificate of occupancy until we bring the fire inspector back and he sees that every single thing has been done. He's been here twice in the last 2 days. So I emailed that over to the school district and the BOCES at about 5:15 maybe, and got the answer back that that didn't seem like the right proper order of things. So I've asked Megan to double check with her contact tomorrow. And when we've resolved it, we can certainly let you all know by email. And we do still anticipate successfully resolving it. But we have, of course, spoken to our insurance broker about it, and he's counseled us, if you don't have that piece of paper, you have all kinds of liability if you let people in the building on Monday. So it's probably a formality, but it's taken a lot of work today and yesterday, and we'll take some work tomorrow to square away. And I'm wondering if you have anything to add, Megan, or correct.
Everything you said was correct. I think that it's the BOCES rep that needs to upload that fire inspection report, and that should sort of get us in the right sequence for State Ed to issue the temporary certificate as soon as it's in their system. And that fire safety rep, whom I spoke to this morning, said that she would do everything to expedite it as soon as it came into their system. I'm optimistic.
Thank you, Megan. Anything else on the design committee or things related to the construction project that Megan needs to be here for?
I don't think so.
All right. Thank you very much, Megan. So we'll move on to agenda item E, the treasurer's report for August 2021 and the check register for September 2021. Tony Rapicki, please take it away.
Good evening, everyone. So for today, I looked over the balance sheet income statement for August and the check register. And just starting with the income statement, you'll notice there was a little bit of income, about $5,000. Miscellaneous income drove the majority of that, and the origin of that $4,858 came from a couple different sources, mostly from PPE reimbursement and refunds for media software contract licenses. So there's no other source of income beyond interest and a little bit of fines, but the bulk of it came from reimbursement of prior expenses. As for expenses, the category of expenses fall in line with prior months. No new categories came up. The amount for August was a little bit different, a little bit less than, I'm sorry, a little bit more than it was for the prior month in July. The primary driver were materials that came in a little bit higher than July, but other than that, everything fell in line to pretty much be a matching amount as we consistently see month over month. So the net loss was $256,406. So the next action that I take is try and track that on the balance sheet and make sure that the checking accounts, cash accounts, and the equity accounts all reflect those changes. The net loss was reflected on the capital accounts. The next thing I check are the changes in cash and the changes in liabilities, focusing primarily on current liabilities, because that would be how they pay the amounts on credit card, or decreases in cash would account for how cash outlays by a check were paid. You'll notice on the balance sheet that the cash balance actually went up. The primary driver of that was the fact that the portion of the amount from the Guilderland Central School District came in, about $468,000 came in, 453,698, excuse me. We had 6,500 before, but that $400,000 number came in, thus is showing why cash increased for the year, for the month rather, despite there being an overall operating loss. The next thing I checked was to check and make sure the construction in process is being increased for the construction costs that occurred during the month. I did not tick and tie every dollar amount that went towards construction costs. Using broad numbers, it did seem like the majority of those expenses were properly accounted as a deferred asset, falling in line with what is to be expected. And other than that, the balance sheet income statement seemed consistent with what was expected from the operations during the month. When looking at the check register, nothing stood out in terms of payees or descriptions that we don't typically see. So I really don't have too many comments on the check register. What I did look at was just look at the renewal project and construction cost and to see if they fell reasonably in line with the changes in construction and process. Again, I didn't tick and tie all the amounts, but using general round numbers, it seemed consistent that it was reflecting the right amounts on the balance sheet. With that, I'll open to any questions or comments people have.
Questions or comments for Tony? All right. So we can go to.
I'm sorry, Caitlin. I just have a quick question, and it's just about the check register, so it might not be Tony that can answer this. But I saw the check for the mosquito and tick monthly service, and I was just curious if that service was pollinator friendly, if you happen to know. I was just thinking about our Carner Blue interests in the child room, and it'd be too bad if we were spraying stuff that didn't welcome the Carner Blue.
I do not know the answer, but I can find out. I do know that we've dealt with similar questions in the past, and I believe that that we have found some sort of a road that is less, I shouldn't say road, some sort of a substance that is less than, that still will kill ticks, which is our primary concern in the garden, because often there are patrons and certainly staff out there, but will do the least amount of damage possible to other species. But we haven't reviewed that in a few years, so I will ask Lou to, we certainly do have material safety data sheets on whatever is sprayed, so it might be a quick check tomorrow morning. And I agree with what I think is the concern behind the question, which is that we've got to, keep the bees alive, basically, butterflies as well. But we're not going to be alive if we kill everything. So I will check as soon as I can. Quite honestly, it might not be tomorrow because of the grand opening and so forth, but I'll find out. And we do that monthly. So on the chance that I fail to report back to you, feel free to bring it up again. So.
All right, thank you so much.
There is one other insect that is sprayed for all around the perimeter of the building. And it's a pretty serious problem for us, at least in the old building, and that is stink bugs. Despite the fact that we spray for them so frequently, we can't seem to really stop them. But anyway, I'll find out.
Thank you, Tim.
Mhm.
Questions for Tony? Right, seeing none, because can't necessarily see everyone in the meeting to see if their hands are raised. We'll do a quick roll call for the treasurer's report for August 2021 and the check register for September 2021. Vanessa?
Yes.
Peter? Oh, you know what? Shoot, motion.
In favor?
We need a motion. I jumped the gun. What I need first is a motion, and then we'll go to a vote. I sincerely apologize. Barbara's going to make a motion. Second by Noreen. Thank you, everyone.
And Caitlin,
right.
just for time's sake, for the people that you can see, we can just raise our hands, and for the
Yeah, if you can see, you don't have to take yourself off mute. I'll just quick go through. But this will, and once I start the order, this will be the order all night. So Vanessa, yes. Peter? Peter? Kathy is Kathy? Yes.
Yes.
Richard? Yes. Michael? Yes. Tony?
Yes.
Yes. Narina, I see a hand. Barbara? Yes. Caitlin? Yes. Marcia? Having a connection issue, I see. Noreen? Yes, I see your hand. Thank you, Noreen. Holding that up so long. Peter? Yes, thank you. Marcia? Okay, Marcia is a did not vote. No, it's a technical issue. Marcia, in favor of the treasurer's report and check register. Yes, thank you. Excellent. All right, so that is unanimous and it passes at 6:38. Next, we'll go into committee reports. Just want to remind everyone and thank all the committees for the excellent work they do. I know it can be cumbersome, and I appreciate the committees for hashing things out in committee and then bringing the recommendations of the committee to the board. I know that there can be dissent in committees, but we appreciate that the committee makes a recommendation and speaks with one voice. So I'm looking forward to hearing these reports. First up, we have audit. Michael?
The audit committee did not meet this month. I've been informed that the outside auditors are expecting to get their report in early November, so that's the time frame looking at.
Excellent. And then also for finance?
The finance committee also did not meet this month.
Okay, and I know you've contacted me regarding starting that process of the finance committee. So I appreciate that. If you have other questions, please continue to reach out. And if you want to try and jumpstart the process and get started sooner than we had in previous years, just work with Carol and your committee on doing so. Building and grounds, Barbara? You did not meet. And long range planning?
we have not met.
Okay, the long range planning committee, now that we are substantially complete with our construction project, we do need the long range planning committee to meet and start writing a new long range plan. So please start meeting as quickly as you can and get those things set. We owe a long range plan to the state, or at least to have one on file. At this point, ours has expired and we put it on hold for a year while we did the construction, because after construction, we'd have a better idea of the long range plan of the library since much of it was being addressed. So you might want to take advantage of meeting and perhaps with Megan just to see or asking questions of the design steering committee to see what got left outstanding from the project that we decided wasn't a part of the project and will need to be put in the plan going forward. Peter, the cafe committee report.
did not meet. However, we'll schedule one in the very near future. Definitely needs to be addressed.
I hope so. I know you guys have some tough work ahead of you, but Jenna has asked that we just reaffirm the committee. It was an ad hoc committee that was formed. No members changed, but it wasn't on the committee list that the board approved at the July meetings. So Jenna, I don't see it attached in the revised version.
It's there. It's there.
I just probably have to scroll. It's just not showing up where I want it to.
Page 2, I believe, in red. Page 2 or 3. It's a full list of committees, and then the cafe committee appears in red.
Yes, thank you. So is there a motion to just reaffirm the committee list? Motion by Barbara. There a second by Marcia. Excellent. Is there any questions? I see none. I can't see everybody's to do a show of hands. We'll go quickly down the list again on this one. Vanessa, yes. Peter? Yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Yes. Richard? Yes. Michael? Yes. Tony? We'll come back. Narina, I see your hand. Barbara? Yes. Marcia, I see your hand. Kate is a yes. And Noreen?
I apologize. My son is heading out the door and I got momentarily distracted. Please tell me again.
Reaffirming the committee list.
Yes.
To include the cafe committee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony? Tony appears to have a connection issue. So we'll mark Tony for now did not vote, and that motion still passes at 6:43 p.m. Thank you very much. I very much look forward to hearing about the future of our cafe. Irina, the foundation?
Yeah, so I reached out to Steve Waxman in the beginning of the month. They were supposed to have a meeting, and then I reached out again September 10th because they were planning on it, and I was just telling him I was out of the country at the time, but please include me on whatever date they were going to schedule it. And then on the 11th, he told me that they did not hold the meeting and that they're going to let me know when they're holding it. So I don't know anything about the foundation as of yet, but I'm sure he'll let me know.
Thank you. I'm sure that they are still recovering and tidying things up from their golf tournament. So I'm looking forward to hearing, got anything to wrap up on that, and then to hear what they're already planning for next year. So great. And then Narina, also the personnel committee?
We did not meet.
All right. Then moving on to labor management, Noreen?
We had nothing on the agenda, so we didn't meet.
Great. Richard, policy committee?
We are meeting a week from Monday.
Thank you. Reminder, anyone who wishes to can attend any of the committee meetings, but people who are not named on the committee will not have a vote, but please feel free to be involved. Next up, we have the COVID Action Committee. Vanessa.
Yes, so thank you. Before I give my report, I actually just wanted to share some concerns with the board that I've been having, specifically the debate that I've been experiencing between meetings that doesn't seem to respect the collective work completed by the committee during their scheduled meetings. I'm concerned because of what I experience and what I assume the staff experiences as a burden that's placed on them to pretty much continue to defend a group decision or recommendation. And then honestly, the disregard for the committee members that aren't all included in these side conversations. So one thing that I'm asking, and I don't know in what venue or how we address it, that perhaps this board could do some work, myself included, to familiarize ourselves with committee work best practices, do some norm setting for our expectations as board members and committee participation practices, and then just a general respect for the effort and time that committee members contribute to work during the committee meetings. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think that we would be better for it to better understand how we can work more efficiently and effectively in committee. And so I don't know, Caitlin, what the process is for that or under what category, but I offer that feedback independent of what I anticipate to be a discussion and a debate about my forthcoming report. So despite how that goes, I still feel that, you know, when we schedule time to work in a committee and people show up to do that, we need to respect that time and at least give them an opportunity to present their recommendations and reserve debate or discussion for the appropriate time.
Richard, did you want to address this before Vanessa gives a committee?
Yeah, just if I could address that process question and tell Vanessa, first of all, an apology that things came up this way. The part of the committee's work, and I couldn't attend the meeting and fully intended to do so, but that's on me, not on you. Part of the reason this came up is because the capacity limit, I found out about as a board member from the Altamont Enterprise. And it to me was something with great implications. And I thought that there should have been a process where I knew about it before the Altamont Enterprise did. It came up in a discussion.
Right now that the ultimate, I don't even know that happened in the enterprise. So that's
It
interesting.
came up in a discussion between a couple of board members and another committee. And I don't think we have a process to fully discuss that. So I agree with you there. I would object to the suggestion that we don't appreciate what committees do, because I think we fully appreciate what committees do, but I think there is a little bit of lapse in procedure as to what action we should take when we hear something that's been publicized in the local media that we haven't even voted on. So I appreciate your being receptive.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, this is also the first I'm hearing about that anything was publicized. So Vanessa, that being said, let's just get this started.
Okay. So the COVID committee met on August 27th. The primary reason that we met was to review and provide some revisions to the service continuity chart, specifically because of the upcoming reopening. So I'm just going to run through some of the things that were discussed and agreed upon for a recommendation. First off, there was a request to affirm that the pandemic operations plan is still in effect. This was a plan that was originally approved on March 18th, 2021 by this board. And so the committee did that with the caveat that we weren't going to be adhering to the quarantining of books, and we actually hadn't been doing that practice for a while. We also very much understood that this was a starting point and we wanted to get the continuity of services updated. I'll talk more about that in a minute, knowing that there was some additional review that would need to be ongoing and continue with the plan. So as far as the continuity of services plan, we discussed moving from a 9-stage plan to a 4-stage plan, which the committee felt was reasonable, less confusing, and a bit more aligned with how positivity rates were being reported now as things have shifted. A couple of things that we took into consideration was at the time, our prior plan continuity service chart would have called for the library to reopen by appointment only, to quarantine books, to have no public restrooms available, and no programs. And so the committee discussed that at length, deciding that we felt like we didn't want that. We wanted to allow some programming outside and with specific conditions. We wanted to make available to the public restrooms that had been raised as a question or concern, and there was some documentation that the group reviewed to better understand the risks associated with it. And so the single-use restrooms were going to be added as an available service. We would cease quarantining the books as our understanding of COVID transmission has evolved, and really just felt like the reopening of the library by appointment only, given our community transmission rate, was probably not the appropriate response. We wanted to allow patrons into the library, so we looked to some other examples. We used Albany's plan as a model. And originally it thought 20, consistent with their headcount recommendation, and then reevaluated that for 30. Let's see, today our positivity rate in Albany County is 5.89%, which puts us into what would have been the 2A period, but it is the red, the high transmission rate zone. And so let's see, lost my place in my notes for a second. I know what was circulated was the draft that included these changes. It included a 30-person limit in person. That is what the group felt comfortable with proposing at the time and felt was a reasonable intermediary step. There are a couple of things that were not part of our discussion that I just want to point out in light of the recent debate. There had been some talk. Tim had indicated that there could be the possibility for some work to continue after the building had opened. So we wanted to have some consideration for staff that might be managing vendors as well as patrons, and allow everybody to enjoy themselves in the library and be safe. And then the last point that I'd like to raise is that I think it's important to consider that the library staff, unlike other local libraries, has not operated a library open to the public by and far during COVID because of the closing for construction. So I do think it seems rather reasonable to at least start off a little conservative so that they have a transition point. If you think about all of the different learnings that the past year plus has allowed other libraries to navigate and negotiate sort of the nuances of COVID operations, this library staff has not been able to do that. And additionally, they have not even been able to operate in the new space. We don't yet know if a 30-person headcount will pose an issue, and I have repeatedly said that the committee is willing to re-examine that after we have our own working knowledge. That is all that I have to say. Tim, do you have anything that you want to add, or any of the other committee members, to the report that I might have missed?
I would just add that.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Tim. There were a couple of other things that we did talk about, which were the outdoor programming, to continue to maintain an outdoor calendaring of programming with a capacity of 15 participants, adults, requiring masks. That was a change, as well as aligning the reporting mechanism to be the CDC community spread statistics that are available online, because they too follow a 4-stage system. We talked about the bathrooms, and we also agreed that the plexiglass barriers, although there's some debate about their effectiveness, are a good visual, physical reminder to patrons to observe a safe distance. So go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
No problem. I would just add that I believe the concern about the number of simultaneous users is certainly worth discussing. So I personally, I'm not running the meeting, but I would welcome that discussion, and basically kind of lean back and let you guys discuss it. There are a number of good solutions to that, but I guess my main thought is if it's set too low on Monday morning, I might have to lift it anyway. If there's 30 people there already in the library and 200 outside the library, I don't think I can reasonably deal with that.
So Caitlin, just a point of process. Do we make a motion before discussion? How does this work?
Yes, so I would welcome a motion on the, adopting the pandemic operations plan as presented, and then debate and discussion. People can make amendments, we can vote on those, and then go forward. So my guess is there's going to be some debate. There will potentially be an amendment. So let's just get in it and see if there's a motion. Is there a motion to adopt the pandemic operations plan as presented?
Can I move it, or does it have to be?
Yep, you can. And second by Marcia. Great. So now we're going to go into a discussion. I would ask that this could be potentially contentious. I know people have strong opinions one way or the other. I would ask people be concise in their points, and additionally be respectful of other board members. Questions are certainly welcome. If you've already made up your mind, please just say why you're, how you're voting, why you're voting that way. And we'll continue to go forward with this in an orderly manner. So I saw a hand from Barbara, then I see a hand from Richard. So we'll start there. And then I see Kathy. And then Peter. So we'll start with Barbara, Richard, Kathy.
Okay. Thanks for the great work on this plan. I just have some questions. When you say 30 people for capacity, you're not counting the staff, correct?
Correct. 30 patrons.
30 patrons. And how did that number come up? Is it by per square feet? How did you determine that number?
We looked to other available examples. As many of you probably know, there's no playbook, so to speak, for COVID operations for libraries. And so some of the discussion that we've had between meetings is it might feel arbitrary, because it probably is. But in the absence of a scientific formula presented to us, we decided to bump up the number from another local example.
The question why I asked, where the library with the square footage is so much larger now, if you had, 5 kids down in the children's area, you had another 5 browsing books, whatever, and they're spread out over the library, it just seems that 30 is a very low number, considering, that we have been closed and people probably would like to come in and explore. And in my head, I was thinking 50, or leave it up to the staff. If they see congregations in a particular area, then whoever is closest to that area can say, well, could you wait a few minutes until somebody leaves the area? In other words, trying to leave it a little more flexible so that the staff and Tim would have a little more leeway in determining, are we too clustered in the children's area? Are we too clustered in the reading area? Too clustered in the teen area?
So just to respond to that, Barbara, I think that did come up, and it's certainly a reasonable solution. The feedback at the time was that staff felt like that might be a little hard to manage and police different areas, while also becoming accustomed to the routines of being open for browsing. The other thing that I'll add about just the capacity of the rooms under the POP, at this high transmission rate, a number of those rooms that contribute to the overall large capacity of the library are actually not in service. So there's no meeting rooms, no study rooms allowed in the continuity of services plan at a high transmission rate. So I just wanted to offer that to everybody as you're kind of doing your mental calculus of what you might think a reasonable capacity number is.
Now, when we say we can't use the meeting rooms, we can't use the meeting rooms for like 6 kids that aren't related in the same family. But if some mom and dad and a child or two kids want to come in and use that room to play chess or checkers or something, would that not be permissible as long as it's the same family unit? What I'm getting at is I'm trying to use our space to the degree that we safely can. And if you have a family unit that, wants to come in, play a game or whatever, I would like to see that happen if it's possible.
I think we all would, and I think that the staff is ready. I just hope that the plan proposal doesn't communicate like an unwillingness to work with people, but we do want to position them for success and not have them have to manage a whole lot of things. I don't think the pandemic operation plan prevents what you just described, Barbara. I just meant the large number. We know that the library now and all of the spaces, there's a very large overall capacity. And I'm just saying those numbers do not contribute to the capacity calculations for the browsing at a high transmission rate. That's all.
Okay, and my last question is the bathrooms. Now, under the, I guess, yellow moderate, where you're just allowing single-use bathrooms, and under substantial, no bathrooms, whatever. And I guess my question with that is, why are we limiting bathroom use? You go to a clinic, doctor's offices, all those bathrooms have been in use throughout the entire thing. You go down to the mall, all those bathrooms are available and are used by people. In our non-single use bathrooms, we could certainly put a sign up on the door, saying, if someone is in there, keep your 6-foot distance or whatever. I'm just trying to get the maximum use out of the spaces, and particularly not having bathrooms for old people and for little young ones really would limit the number of people that would be able to use the library. And I personally don't see any reason why we would take off bathroom use unless you've seen it as a CDC requirement or something.
No. And to clarify, we added it back in.
Then all
bathroom is not eliminated.
are violating that, because as I said, bathroom usage to me is important for both the old and the young.
I have a list going of names. Michael, I've got you after Rich, Kathy, and Peter. So Barbara, does that answer the bulk and majority of your questions?
It gives me an idea, and I might put an amendment out after I hear from other people.
Sure. All right, Rich.
I'd just like to be able to ask Tim a question before I state my opinion. Tim, the last statement you made confused me. If there are 200 people waiting, we have a policy that says there are 30. What does the policy mean if you would let more than 30 in?
Well, Richard, I wasn't going to let more than 30 in until the policy limit was questioned. And I believe the reason the policy limit is being questioned is that it seems reasonable to some board members that a very large crowd could show up the first moment that we're open after 18 months. And, I'll stand in front of the building and enforce a policy limit of 30 if that is the determination of this meeting. But it's going to be a hard thing to do, and it ultimately might be impossible. So I think that those who have questioned that policy limit have asked a good question. I guess one thing I would add is that at the time the COVID committee met, I was not aware, and I don't believe any of the committee members or the majority of the committee members were aware that apparently the CDC no longer recommends any limitations on indoor space usage.
Thank you. So I would just like to say that I think the board would agree, those who have been around, that there has been no one more conservative on this COVID issue than myself. When I heard about this limit, to put my position succinctly, I think we're opposing an arbitrary limit on a public that deserves access to our library. If there was a numerical or epidemiological basis to this 30, I would have a lot easier time agreeing to it. But just like the gentleman who commented at the beginning that the taxpayers are not going to be happy if they're turned away, if they're turned away for a reason that doesn't have a basis in fact, I would think they would be even unhappier. And I don't feel like I'm doing my fiduciary duty if I agree with an arbitrary limit. Voorheesville, I often compare us to nearby particular suburban libraries. Voorheesville has no limit. I did not get a chance today. I was by there. I was going to stop in and see if I could talk to the director briefly. I didn't have a chance to do that. And the Albany numbers that we've seemed to base this on, times 1.5, it was marked all over his response by email today that this should not apply to any other library. It applies to their surroundings only. So we have been closed for a very long time, 474 days, as I've learned from our correspondent to the Altamont Enterprise. I think that to limit access to a number of people where people may be turned away when, as Barbara has said in a previous meeting, our access standard is very much different than one of the stores at the mall or Price Chopper, is not the right thing to do. Everyone will be wearing masks. Everyone is up to themselves to enforce social distancing. And I would also say that I don't think this is a practical idea. Is there somebody going to be standing there counting the ingress and egress to the building and coming up with a net total every minute? I don't think it's a practical solution, and I don't think it's one that's based in fact. So for that reason, I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you, Richard. Kathy?
I think that was well said, Richard. I guess my question has to do with the vaccination rate, and I'm assuming that this 30 that is proposed, it doesn't matter whether they're vaccinated or not. And I just note that we've got more than 80% of the county residents vaccinated, and it's interesting. My husband did a little mathematical calculation in his update today. I just read through it recently, and the number of people testing positive for COVID, the number would be like 0.07% of the vaccinated population. The number getting, say, a serious case would be 0.05%. So, I mean, the numbers are pretty low. I mean, in terms of vaccinated people having serious issues, and it's interesting to me that it just never seems to come up. It's almost as though it's always 2020. You know, it's like it doesn't exist. And I think that should be a factor in terms of your capacity of your library. And it just surprised me that it just never seems to come up. So and I agree with Richard that it's really difficult to enforce. And you know, this has been closed for so long. It's been a lot of publicity about all these cool things in the library, and it's also a very large space. I mean, and I know that the 800 capacity includes all the rooms and all this, but still that's the capacity, and you're basically letting like under 4% of your capacity in the library if you're doing just 30. So, I mean, I'm not really sure, like I said, how you came up with that number, but it seems arbitrarily low to me. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kathy. Peter?
And that I was even in shock. So this is not with the operations plan, but when I received the message this past week that we were going virtual for this meeting, I was in shock. And just being honest, I sent a message to Tim saying, "What's the deal? Why are we doing this?" And you know, we talked for a little bit about it, and I just want to say, I completely disagree with the fact that we're doing this virtual and that we don't have the library open. I've said it in the past and I'll say it again. We require staff to come into the facility every single day. We should be there too. We can separate. There's plenty of space, no issues. On the second issue of this plan, I'm not going to repeat everything that the last three board members who have spoke said, but I'm in complete agreement with them as far as the capacity limit. And then we even looked at the capacity limit for outside, which I found so surprising, which was 15 participants to be able to end an outdoor activity. Where these numbers came from, I don't know. Has happened. We were told as board members, we need to follow science. Science is the way that we need to go. Let's follow science. We went down that road. Science then said, well, you can open your doors again. And in fact, schools and things like that started, yet we've still failed to open to the general public who are paying a massive amount of money in taxes for us to operate on their behalf. And I have a feeling we're heading down that road again, which is pretty sad to me. I'm not one to say that this disease does not exist. It absolutely does. And it looks like numbers are going up a little bit. But at some point in time, we have to open up and allow the general public to get inside the library. And 30 and 15 are two numbers that are extremely low and I believe have absolutely zero scientific backing. That's it.
Thank you, Peter. Michael?
Yes, I have a few comments. I have one very quick question, which is there a more current version of the plan than the one that was included in the board packet? Because some of the things that Vanessa was describing as far as the status of restrooms and outdoor programs don't seem to be reflected in the version that's in the board packet. Is there a more up-to-date version? It's looking at the wrong draft. Anyone?
No, as far as I know, that is the draft. I'm not sure which information you don't see in the plan.
Well, a few things. I had thought that you had said that there was a amendment or a change so that the restrooms would remain open, or at least the single occupancy restrooms would remain open even on the higher levels. Is that correct? Or because
let me pull it back up. I just had it up.
The copy that I'm looking at, Mike, does not include bathroom usage on substantial or high. And again, that's on page 19 of what I have.
Right, that's what I'm looking at. It's on the substantial or high, it says that the restrooms are suspended service and the single occupancy restrooms are only open if we're down at the moderate level.
Right.
And then the same, I thought there was also a mention by Vanessa earlier, maybe I misheard, that there'd been a reconsideration of allowing the outdoor programs to continue because according to this, all outdoor programs are suspended.
Apologies. I think the confusion is coming in to what our county transmission rate was at the time of the meeting. We were not at high at that point. And so the deliberations and considerations that I was reviewing from my notes were based on that. Do you have your hand up, Marcia? Were you adding to that? Oh, I think you're muted if you're talking to us.
Okay. So this is accurate that under the current level that we're at, the high level here, all restrooms would be closed and all outdoor programs would be discontinued. Is that correct? Just want to be clear.
I'm sorry, I am having a computer issue trying to pull it back up. So if another one of the committee members has it handily, they can answer while I work to get it back on my screen.
I can just try to answer the question based on attendance at the meeting rather than looking at the document, which is quite lengthy. The current plan that I am under the impression we're following is that the single-use restrooms would all be open Monday when we plan to reopen, and that the as they're called, gang bathrooms, which are not lockable. So the only way you can close them is by asking people not to use them in a sign. We ask people not to use them on the theory that when two or more people are going to the bathroom at the same time. When one person is going to the bathroom at the same time, they cannot infect themselves. Anything that's infectious, they've already got. But when two people are in a bathroom doing personal hygiene, flushing a toilet, which creates something called a toilet plume, it's quite possible to get an infection of one kind or another, including, I presume, COVID, through that. So that's the logic behind closing restrooms. I noted in the committee meeting that when you close restrooms, you also prevent people from washing their hands, which is a very key part of preventing transmission of anything. And that's when a member of the group suggested the compromise of having the single-use ones open at all times and the multi-use closed.
All right, that doesn't seem to be reflected in the version that's in the board packet that I'm looking at. So I wanted to clarify that. And also the outdoor programs, the complete discontinuation of that also seems to be what this calls for. So I don't know if that's, but let me move on to just a couple other quick comments. I think I want to, I agree with the statements that Rich made earlier. I think I'm largely in accord with his views and the views of some of the other board members that have spoken. I think if we're talking about programs in the facility where a large number of people might be congregating in a small area where people are sitting close together and we're inviting a large number of people into one space, I can understand the concern. But if we're talking about browsing, that tends to be a pretty solitary activity where people are going about their own business. And as far as social distancing, people are typically, even when there has been no capacity limits in the library in the past, when I'm just browsing, I'm rarely, in close proximity to other people for any substantial period of time. So I think that should be taken into account in what we're considering. I also, just to follow on something that Peter had brought up, I had questions also about the decision to move the board meeting to virtual. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I want to know what our criteria or why we've made that decision. It's good that we have that option now under the state law, the ability to do that, but I'm not sure it was necessary for this meeting. And
sure, Michael, I can speak to that. So Tim had asked me what my thoughts on it were, and as did Kathy and Noreen, as the other officers of the board. And, I was very much on the fence because with the library anticipated to be opening, I did feel like we should be there. But it was also, Tim had said, yes, sure, we could find a room if you need one at this point. But with the wiring happening in the meeting rooms in the last week, we weren't sure quite when that would get done. But it was actually Kathy who said that the town doctor had recommended that the board meetings at the town be virtual because it could be an extended period of time in a, confined or somewhat confined space. So Kathy's recommendation was that to be consistent with the virtual school board meetings, the virtual town meetings, and upon a recommendation of the town doctor, that the meeting also be virtual. With school starting, our kids are in schools, and, we should set a good example and say it's safe to go and do things. That being said, we have, virtual is a safer option than meeting in person in regard to the spread of COVID. So the thought was, this is the recommendation of the town doctor. Additionally, it is, it is something, school board meetings are currently in person, but it was the recommendation of the town doctor that meetings be virtual to limit several hours of us all together. And I thought this board has pretty consistently voted in favor of taking safest course of action. And I thought if there is a safest alternative to meeting in person in regard to the transmission of COVID, we should take it, particularly 3 weeks after the start of school, and a lot of people being mandated to report back to their offices at this time. The best way to assure that we could have a full board meeting was to also have a virtual board meeting. I would have loved to be in the building tonight with everybody, but it seemed the cautious course of action in this regard was to meet virtually. So after communicating in conference with the officers and the library board director, the decision was made to go virtual because the option was again made available to us. So in regards to the pandemic operations plan, Barbara, I see your hand and I will be with you shortly. So in regard to the pandemic operations plan, the 2 points of contention that I see are restrooms and capacity limits. You know, I could see having an outdoor program with 15 people simply just for keeping people far enough apart where there's not the potential for spread or as high potential for spread, as well as, you know, being able to effectively deliver a program. 15 people, all 6 feet apart, is a large area for a program to be run. That would probably then also include the need for some sort of audio enhancement for whatever individual is running the program. So I could see just from the standpoint of the person doing the program that might be useful. But our points of contention among the board seem to be a limit on capacity and restrooms. That being said, Tim, you've pointed out that there's no way to lock the multi-use restrooms. Okay. So then the policy is enforced by, you know, signage. Is that, you know, I'm not sure that's an effective way to enforce the policy, or to have a policy that's only affected by signage. It could be that potential compromise could be that it is not part of the plan and the policy, but instead the signs do go up anyway. Just say, you know, to avoid, you know, multiple people in restrooms, you know, we have single restrooms available. You know, one of the things that we often talk about on this board, or has been discussed in the past, was what's the point of a policy if you can't enforce it? And I can see the point of the policy, but if we're not able to physically close those restrooms, I'm not sure putting in the policy has the teeth it needs. And if it has to get dropped from the policy in order for it to, the pandemic operations plan to pass, if that needs to get dropped for the plan to get passed, I would be okay with that compromise. Additionally, in terms of limits on capacity, hi Narina, I see your hand and I will recognize you after Barbara. I recognize the need for some order in the building for all the reasons that Vanessa has pointed out. So my question to the board is, can we come up with a compromise on a number of people that could be in the building? People do not like 20, they do not like 30. You know, is there some number that we could raise that to? There is a counter an automatic people counter inside the front door. So the current occupancy is displayed on a screen in the lobby. So are people saying no number at all, or would people be comfortable with a compromise? You know, so Vanessa, I'll let you as committee chair rebuttal my points and questions, and then we'll go Barbara and Narina.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I would personally be comfortable of reevaluating the limit. Some of the concerns stated about the level of interest from other board members in the reopening of the library sort of reinforce my conviction that we need to have a limit in the event that there is extreme interest that could prove to be an unsafe setting. So that was all that I was going to offer. And just to add, we actually had repeatedly conveyed that there was interest in reevaluating this as we went on. And I have to say that I can accept being the chair if everyone can accept that this was a committee proposal, and it has not always felt like that. The last thing that I'll add and ask Tim to chime in on, there were some concerns expressed in the committee meeting that we haven't exactly shared here around staff reception to a high limit. And there was some concern that it could cause a staffing issue. And I just want to make sure that I raise that as we're debating or considering reevaluating that number, because I would not want to create an issue where we then had not the appropriate amount of staff to staff our reopening library.
Caitlin, did you want me to comment on that?
If you'd like to, or you have a comment or recommendation, please feel free to share.
Sure. So the meeting was probably about 2 weeks ago now, and I'm not saying that I'm, forgetful, but there's been a lot of water under the bridge. I believe I did express a concern about the staff, being extremely uncomfortable if the doors were just flung wide open, 200, 300, 400 people were to come in all at once on the first day at 9:30 a.m. I think that my concern is lesser, having worked with the staff for the 2 weeks since that meeting. I think that there's probably a general recognition among the staff, as there appears to be among the board, that there's a lot of interest in seeing the library. It is opening at 9:30 in the morning on a school day. So the idea that it would be a giant crowd might be somewhat mitigated by that. Might have a larger crowd after school or in the early evening that particular day. But I believe I did say that I was concerned some staff would not participate if we were to reopen with no limit. But I must say honestly that all of my conversations with staff and department heads in the last couple of weeks, I can observe that collectively we're getting much closer to a comfort level with that. And I talked to a couple other library directors today. I was giving tours of our facility to other library directors. And, in general, the point has been made repeatedly to me that staffs are very uncomfortable as the reopening approaches due to COVID, but they become comfortable quickly because they realize that people are by and large reasonable people and by and large wearing their masks. And as one board member pointed out, there's a high vaccination rate in the area compared to lots of parts of the country. So I believe that if the limit were higher than 30, some number that was reasonable to expect, safely could be in the building at a time, that I don't think we'd have any kind of a work stoppage issue or anything like that. We have a great undefined area, as any employer does, with potential medical exemptions to working with the public, but none have been raised by individual staff members yet. Until they do, I'm not particularly worried about exemptions to working with the public or something like that. To try to be clear, my own concern, I believe, reflects the staff's growing comfort level. Now, I probably have staff listening right now, and I probably have some staff that are uncomfortable right now. But I think some compromise between the idea of a severe limit and the idea of no limit is, in my opinion, probably the way to go.
Thanks, Tim. So Barbara and then Narina.
Okay, the one thing that I didn't get into when I was making my original comments was the outdoor space. I just want to share my experiences over the last couple of weeks. I've gone to football games where there have been hundreds of people outdoors, some with masks that had chose to wear them, some that didn't. I've gone to Pop Warner games. I've gone to a cross-country meet outdoors where nobody was wearing masks with very, very few exceptions. Outdoor spaces are so much better, air-wise, airflow-wise, safety-wise. And I don't know why we would keep a 6-foot distance for an outdoor program when our kids are in school and indoor spaces at 3 feet. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. It seems that we're putting up barriers unnecessarily for access to the library. And getting back to the restroom situation, I think you have to keep the restrooms open because, again, I see no reason not to. If you want to try putting a sign on the multi-stall ones, I suppose you could. But again, you know, you go to a church setting, you go to a football setting, there are gang restrooms there and everybody's getting along. You go to a concert down at the Palace and, you know, there's 10 or 15 stalls. And the only thing I've seen is that they've sometimes put tape between the hand wash stations so that you're a little bit separated, whereas at least in most of the ladies' rooms, they're very, very close. So as I said, I would like to see the capacity increased. I'd like to see bathrooms available under all conditions, and the outdoor limits for programming, I think are far too restrictive as currently written, as experienced in our general population in the community.
Thank you, Barbara. Narina?
Hi, thanks. So I had a few notes listening to everybody regarding the bathrooms. I was wondering if we could, so if there's, you know, in the multiple stall ones, if there's 3 stalls, that we could put a sign on that says 3 people at a time, you know, so that if there is a line that it would form outside and possibly obviously with the spacing requirement. But I think that the bathroom should be open. I think that's like a basic necessity, and especially with saying that we want to wash our hands more often than we should. I also don't think that anybody can police the bathrooms in any way since they can't be closed. So maybe a sign that says if there's 3 stalls in there that only 3 people at a time, or maybe you would reduce it by 1 to have like a barrier, that could be possible. I was also wondering if the bathrooms maybe could be cleaned more frequently, but I'm not sure what the cleaning staff is doing regarding that, if we are going to open. So that's my comment about the bathrooms. The other one, I was just wondering, because everyone's saying that the 30 is an arbitrary number. When we had a mandate from the state with regards to how many people could be in a building or in a room, did anyone look at that to see how that would apply in this instance if we are considered high? And at the time that we had a mandate and we were high, what were the numbers then? Like, what was the percentage recommended or mandated at that time? Maybe we could go with that number. I haven't looked, so I don't know.
Tim?
So on that last question, I'll try to be as precise as I can. The building capacity limits that you see in the map that I sent to you are established with a formula that architects use. And when COVID and social distancing came along, we learned that the formula did not need to change because it already accounted for approximately 6 feet of distance between people. However, when you look at the numbers, it's hard to think this through. So for example, I believe on the map, the Helderberg room capacity that Megan has here is 220. So if you envision 220 people in that room, I personally don't know of any way that you could separate them all either 3 or 6 feet apart. So the science, if you will, of how room capacities are established, or the custom of how architects establish it, is something that none of us, I presume, knows too much about. I don't. But when you take the whole building and you have 800 ish, I don't know the exact number, but the CDC recommendations were to cut things in half. Now I understand they don't exist anymore, but if you cut 800 in half, you get 400. I guess I would suggest one reasonable way of moving forward. If you look at the parts of the building that will be open on Monday, they include the new youth edition and the adult reading area. The adult reading area has 127 per Megan, and the youth area has 83. You add those together, you get 210. If you subscribed to the CDC theory, which again, I understand is no longer in effect, 100 would be approximately half of that, or 105. And to me, I would throw that out there as a reasonable kind of starting point for this discussion, because I cannot give you a number of how many people are in the library at any given time. But back pre-COVID and pre-construction, I think it's rarely more than 50 or 60. You know, when there's a big program with 120 people in one room and then another 50, 60, 70, 80 people, a very busy time on a Saturday afternoon, you might have 100, 120, something like that. But we're not doing those kinds of programs for right now. And so we're really going to just draw in the curiosity factor, the novelty of a new building, and the desire to browse. And, you know, we don't have public computers yet, so people aren't going to be sitting down there. So it seems to me that if we set 100, for example, most of the time that we would be open after Monday, we wouldn't be at 100. You know, we'd be at a lower number than that.
Okay,
Would you be open to a motion?
Let's Narina finish up, and then Richard will open to a motion. Narina?
I just have a few more points. So the opening on Monday, I know, Tim, that you had said, what if I have 200 people come in just because it's opening time? Are we still doing like a big opening with balloons and whatnot?
No, we aren't. And the reason is essentially because of COVID. You know, with opening on Monday, it's too late to change that concept. But when the COVID committee met, it was my personal understanding that there were still recommendations from the CDC and from New York State about limiting the number of people in a public place. I've learned that I'm apparently wrong about that. But Luann's publicity will be saying things like, when the coast is clear from COVID, perhaps in the spring, we do hope to have a large community celebration, both indoors and out, at a time when we know that that's a safe thing to do.
Okay. All right, good. And then my next thing was, I'm not familiar with what happened with the Altamont Enterprise or whatever was said. But my understanding is that someone had told them, from what you're saying, that was discussed, that a limit was discussed. Is there a media policy for the board? Like whatever, I mean, I know we're public, but if someone communicates to the media and we're part of the board, do we have a policy about how to do that? Do we have like a person that communicates with the media only, or, you know?
We do have that policy. It's called Who Can Speak for the Library, I believe is the name of the policy. And it's the board president, the library director, and the PR person are the people that are, you know, tasked in general with media relations and public relations. I believe what Richard might have been referring to is that our weekly press release that our PR person put out said that we were looking at having a limit of simultaneous users in the library per the pandemic operations plan. You know, I'm not quite sure what language Luann used. It's been a couple of weeks ago, but it may have come across as though we did have such a limit. We expected this discussion, I believe it's fair and accurate to say, at the board meeting, because that's why we're asking for the policy to be approved or not approved. And so, you know, we made a recommendation as a committee, but it's clear both from, you know, conversations before these meetings and also from what's going on in the meeting that our recommendation is not universally shared, and boards recommend things to committees, and then, or excuse me, vice versa. Committees recommend things to boards, and then boards take votes.
Yeah, I don't think it's uncommon for places these days to have a limit of people, so I don't think that would be a shock to people necessarily, because if you go into a room that's smaller than the others, like in the library, we could have a sign that says, you know, I don't know, like in the youth room, maybe 6 people at a time or whatever we decide, right? So I don't think that's uncommon. I've seen that in most public places. All right, and the last comment I had was regarding outdoor programs. I did hear something on NPR from a doctor at a university, which I forget now, it's been a while ago, discussing the fact that transmission rates are much lower outside, especially in transit. Like if you're just passing by somebody, you're not necessarily in the same vicinity with that possibly infected person. Plus you're outside, so the air circulates differently. So it's very unlikely that people will get sick outside unless you're literally in each other's faces, like maybe at a concert or something like that. So I don't know much about the science. That's just all I heard a few weeks ago. So I'm pretty sure though that if we do some research, we would find that outdoors, it's very unlikely that the transmission would be high. So I would be probably open to having outdoor programs, I guess, depending on what they involve. And that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Narina. Richard? And then Marcia, I see your hand. Marcia, I see your hand after Richard. Richard, you're muted.
I am not in favor of arbitrary limits, but I see it as having a limit as a compromise between having no limit and having too small limit. So in that interest, I would like to propose an amendment. My amendment is that we allow 100 patrons to browse at any time in the library, and that we encourage the use of single restrooms when possible by the use of signage, but we leave all restrooms open to the public.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion amendment by Richard, second by Barbara. Richard, please remind me if the person who made the motion has to accept it or before we vote.
It's really from a committee, so the
Okay.
committee made it. So I think it's amendable.
Okay.
But I have to do something because currently there's a motion that I made.
No. So we can amend. We need to amend the plan. So here's what we can do. Vanessa, we can table your motion until this is discussed, and then we can revisit the motion as the amended plan. Does that work? Or do you want to, or do we need to have a formal vote down of the plan as presented and then amend it?
Can I withdraw it?
Yes.
Just to make this simple,
You can.
not want her making
Okay.
it more.
But she doesn't need to. Anytime you have a motion like that on the floor, anybody can amend it, have a second, you vote.
Correct, but Richard's not amending the motion. He wants to amend the pandemic operations plan.
Which is her motion.
Okay.
I mean, however you want to do it, she can withdraw it and we could.
Vanessa's going to withdraw, and then Richard is making a motion to increase the capacity limits inside the building on the pandemic operations plan.
Could I ask a quick question before Richard? Or
sure, let me finish speaking, and then I will be happy to let you answer. I just want to clarify what Richard has put on the table. 100 people inside the building as the capacity limit, and then encouraging use of single-use restrooms, but all restrooms are open.
Correct.
Okay. Peter?
I just had a quick question, and I don't know if somebody has the answer to this, but what is the current phase that New York State is in? Does anybody know? Are we 2, 3, 4?
As far as I know, those phases ended when they lifted the restrictions. The stages we've been talking about are CDC stages of transmission level.
All right, well, all right, so let me just say this real quick before, Tim, you mentioned the certificate of occupancy and the limit for the library is what? What would it be? I can't hear you, you're on mute.
The overall limit for the building is 800 and something.
So 800 and something. So this was just reading from and we're going with the CDC guidelines, but I just want to share, this is a reopening for New York and mandatory during phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, although Vanessa says we're currently not going with that. But I just want to say what this said. Limit the total number of occupants at any given time to no more than 50% of the maximum occupancy for a particular area as set forward by the certificate. And then the other thing I wanted to note was when it talks specifically about small spaces, elevators, vehicles, I would also say bathrooms would be considered small spaces. It should be one individual at a time unless all individuals are wearing face coverings. If occupied by more than one person, keep occupancy under 50% of the maximum capacity. So I think even the number of 100 is way under where we should be at.
Peter, I just wanted to point out some comments that Vanessa had made at the beginning of this conversation, that currently what would be open are not the meeting rooms, not, the Helderberg rooms and things that really contribute to our capacity levels. So I had looked at the email that Tim had sent earlier regarding the different occupancy levels of the areas that will be open. And 100 is much more in line with the area, 50% of the capacity of the areas that will be open to the public on Monday morning.
Right. The only thing I'm saying is most of the things we're saying tonight are not based on any scientific fact. It's based on people's opinions and coming up with some number. This is how we've continued to do this for over a year and a half. We just create things, these own ideas that we have. The numbers are ridiculous. And some of you might disagree with me. We spent $8.7 million to build an expansion on the library, increased everybody's taxes in the town of Guilderland, and nobody's been allowed to build. Now we're going to limit the number, went from 30. I'd rather go with 100 as opposed to 30, but still, this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Vanessa, you wanted to speak to that?
Yes. So first, then vote no on the motion if that's how you feel. Second of all, the reason the library hasn't been open is because it's under construction, not because any of us are preventing it. I don't understand why this is so challenging. The spirit behind any of these recommendations, since it's obvious that we have to state it explicitly every time, is to open safely and allow everyone to enjoy the library. It is not coming from a spirit of keep people away and don't let them see the public investment. Second of all, there is still a significant population of our community that we thought was so important to base our entire construction project on building a new wing for, that are not eligible to be vaccinated. Therefore, we have we have a responsibility to create an environment that is safe for those patrons.
Responsibility to be safe and open. And I'm sorry if anybody disagrees with me on this. No other place do employees decide when they're coming back to work. Tim mentioned just a little bit ago that the employees are uncomfortable with being around the general public. That's not acceptable. If that's the case, then this is the wrong job. You deal with the general public. That's part of the job. We're going to be heading on 2 years of not being open. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Narina, I see your hand. I think you can go ahead.
Okay for me to, am I
go
next?
ahead.
I was just wondering if there's a plan if we do have a positive person in the library that's traced to the library. What is our plan then, if any?
Tim, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So we follow the county guidance. So the county Department of Health guidance. So we, let's say it's a staff member as an example, because that's what we're more used to. And also what we're more likely to find out about. People don't walk around wearing a sign saying I'm positive. So if we have a staff member test positive or have an exposure to a family member or some other close contact that is positive, we immediately send that person home. We shut down their work area for 24 hours. You're advised not to be in the work area where an infection was known for 24 hours. Then we clean it. That person goes and gets their test, or if they are positive, they're going to let us know before they come to work. They're going to stay home. They're going to get well. They're going to follow the county guidance, which does change a little bit over time, but generally involves testing if you've got symptoms, and staying at home until the symptoms clear and or the test comes back negative. As far as a patron, I'm not sure there's any way to have a policy or a procedure. How are you going to know the patron is positive? So
some organizations were having people write down contact information on days that they attended. That was not something that we included in this plan. So the simple answer is no, there is no way to alert people that they were in the library at the same time with someone who tests positive subsequently.
All right, so Richard has made a motion to make some amendments to the plan, to raise the capacity of indoor space to 100 and to recommend that people use single-use restrooms, but understandably leave the restrooms open. I feel that that is a compromise, and I'm hoping that the board can come together, make a compromise, and pass the plan so that once Tim gets the certificate of occupancy, the building can safely be open to the public. Yes, Vanessa, then Barbara.
Just one last thing, I just wanted to ask, if this did not pass, am I correct in assuming that we go back to the original draft of the plan that was approved in March?
Okay.
No, I'm asking.
Oh,
we don't come to agreement tonight. Does that leave the March?
Yes, it leaves the
Okay.
other
So
plan
people
in place.
need to understand that that's a 9-stage plan by which the library would be opening by appointment only on Monday.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that clarification. I think that's really important for the board to know. Barbara.
I think Marcia had her hand up before me.
Excellent. Marcia?
I just have some practical questions. Do we have any indoor programs planned? No.
no.
Programs planned.
We have no indoor programs planned, plus you're fading in and out.
I'm sorry, do we have any outdoor programs planned?
A handful, 4 or 5, I believe. Some have already taken place that were planned.
People? Do they ever get more than 15 people?
Occasionally, 20, 25.
Okay.
In normal times, you could get, in normal times, we didn't do too many outdoor programs, but
Yeah.
we've had 60 or 70, I believe, since the pandemic started. I
Yeah.
don't know. I can't follow it that closely, but it's usually 15 to 20.
Okay. And I've never been in the library other than some event in the Helderberg room, like a concert or a discussion period where there's been more library in particular. I could be wrong, and I'm at the library pretty frequently. I've never seen more than 100 people in the library. So I don't have a problem with Richard's amendment. I think hopefully it will pass. Everyone seems to, at least what I've heard. Perhaps I respect disagree with that. I think that to the extent that we can satisfy the staff and have a comfort level with the staff that, as you stated, as the library opens up and people start coming in,
Marcia, you're very much having connection issues. And now you've cut out. So we'll see if Marcia comes back.
I'm
in
sorry?
the meantime, we'll have you've cut out. We missed quite a bit of that. But then I'll see. We'll see if you can finish, and then we'll go Kathy, then Barbara. All right, Kathy.
I didn't quite understand what Vanessa said about suddenly it's going to be appointment only on Monday. I mean, wouldn't the motion be to amend the plan that the COVID committee came up with? I mean, or it sounds like Vanessa is saying that we
have a plan.
It would go back to the original plan somehow.
We have a plan in place. If we don't pass a new plan, it will revert to the plan that is currently has been approved by the board.
I wasn't suggesting that. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm a little uncertain. Like, so the motion to have 100 capacity would not actually be 100 people on Monday?
It would. So what we're trying to do is come to a compromise between what was presented at tonight's board meeting and then the discussion that was subsequently had on the presentation of this plan. If the board cannot reach a compromise and cannot pass a new pandemic operations plan, the plan that the board originally voted on in the spring will remain in place, which means that based on the transmission rate and the numbers, that plan says that the library is open by appointment only.
Okay, so that's only if we don't pass this and
right.
we revert to the original.
If we can pass something tonight, then we have a new plan. And what I'd like to see is some sort of compromise between board members so that we can get a new plan passed tonight so that we don't have to go to appointment only on Monday. Does that make sense? Okay,
Sounds
Barbara.
good. Sounds good.
I'm just wondering if Richard would hold off on his motion here, and if we make the motion to put the plan that Vanessa put on the table today, then we just amend that plan with Richard's motion and perhaps another one that I'd like to make. From the process standpoint, would that be cleaner? Because then we'd know that we're working with the current plan that Vanessa's committee has presented to us, and then we're only tweaking a few things here.
Richard, you're on mute.
My intent with my amendment was to take Vanessa's committee plan and just change
Right.
2 minor things or change 2 things.
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure what you're saying about holding off. I'm advocating passing the plan that's on the table with 2 amendments.
Right, but from the process standpoint, she withdrew that motion. So I think we need to put that back on the table.
Oh, okay.
And amend it. So if you would just withdraw your motion for a minute and my second, then we can put Vanessa's plan that we all have in our folders. Somebody has to second it. We have to put it up for debate, and then you're next on the docket. Would that work? Caitlin?
I think that's what we've
why
been
Richard
doing.
can't propose
amendments.
amending the submitted recommendation. I mean,
I don't think it matters the order it goes in. I think Richard can very much make a motion to amend the presented plan. And that we can vote on that motion. We can all agree to a plan, and then that can get passed.
I change my motion to accept the submitted change to the pandemic operations plan with the 2 amendments that I stated. So one motion to accept the plan with amendments.
And I seconded that.
Okay, so Richard has made a motion to accept the plan with the discussed amendments of raising the capacity limit indoors to 100 and the restrooms. And Barbara seconded it. Yes, Barbara.
And then I just have a question on his amendment. In light of what Peter just shared with us from the CDC, if we're following CDC guidelines, we're saying that everybody is going to be masked in the library, then you don't need to limit the capacity of that gang restroom. Is that correct, Peter?
We're not putting something about the gang restroom
Well, he
necessarily.
did in his motion. He said that.
We're encouraging the use of the individual restrooms. It is safer to use an individual restroom. We are saying if you choose to use the gang restroom, as I have done an occasion, you can accept that risk, but we would prefer that you would use the individual ones. Because the person who's next to you in the gang restroom may not want to accept the same level of risk that you do.
Thank you, Richard. So Richard did not put in his motion any limit on the number of people that could be in a gang restroom. He is simply saying we are encouraging the use of the single-use restrooms, but no restrooms will be explicitly closed to the public.
What is the limit for outdoor programming on this amended motion, Richard?
That will
I
be
have
another
not come up
motion.
with one. If you look at the chat, Noreen asked me if I had a recommendation, and I don't. The 15 rings true with me from someplace, but I just have been unable to find it and pay attention to the meeting at the same time. So I don't have a recommendation for outdoor programs at this point, other than that everybody be masked, particularly that we're in a high transmission. Both our prevalence per 100,000 and our infection rate are both put us in the high. So we need to be masked outdoors as well as indoors.
Noreen.
Can I just say quickly, and this is from personal experience, going to the library at really vast different times of the day. There's more bathrooms now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot more. So my experience as a woman going into the bathroom with kids and all that, I've personally never, I shouldn't say never, for me, I've never really had an issue with so many people being in the bathroom at the same time. And I'm speaking, as a woman, and the women's bathroom usually is more crowded, but I don't know if that's really going to be an issue. Usually people come in, they do their business, their kids come in, and they're out the door. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I don't know if it would be such an issue in the future. I mean, maybe now with the library being bigger, new things come around, but I just wanted to put that out there.
All right, so there's a motion and there's a second. Do people want to continue to have discussion, or are people ready to vote?
Caitlin, I think we have to vote on the motion, but I would like to make a motion after the vote to, further amend the plan.
So you want us to vote to adopt the plan, and then you'd like to have another one to amend it later?
Well, I want to make a motion on the outdoor capacity. And I don't know how.
Amendment now.
I don't know how you want to do it. Usually you deal with the amendment on the floor and then you take any other amendments. But he tied it to the plan, so then we'd have to have a motion, I guess, to amend the whole plan with the motion that was accepted, Rich's motion.
I think we could accept some amendments and not accept others. So if you put yours on at the same time as Richard's, we could say.
No, we
yes,
can't.
No.
Yeah, nope. So Vanessa.
Can Barbara just share we're still in discussion. At this point, it would be appropriate to share what you would like to see in the final. So like, what limit do you want to have for outdoor programming?
On the outdoor programming, I would make a motion that we would restrict it to 25 people that are masked, but that don't have to maintain the 6-foot distancing, that we go to the 3-foot distancing that, is present in schools currently for all our students. And that this would, to me, give the staff a lot more flexibility in their programming and ability to do an outdoor program. And according to Tim, the maximum that we normally have is 25. And usually it's less than that, you know, for our outdoor programming. But I don't want to restrict it where they have to be at Tower Center Park 6 feet apart and have amplification and everything else. And considering that we know now from experience that outdoor airflow and outdoor spaces are far less conducive to the spread of COVID, I would like to give our staff that opportunity to do their outdoor programming.
So Barbara, I don't necessarily see anywhere in the plan where it says that there's a set distance for outside programming that people have to be apart. It's just a number of participants in the plan.
Okay, Vanessa wanted to say something. Maybe she can clarify it.
Well, no, I was just going to ask a clarifying question. It feels weird to debate raising the limit. I mean, programming has limits that are inherent to what the activity are anyway. And the staff are going to choose a size that's conducive for delivering the highest quality program, which might be less than the 25 you're looking for. I just want to make that point. Like, we can say a number, but in the actual committee meeting, we were discussing it with the staff that planned the meetings. And so there was some insight into how they wanted to conduct the programming. So I just wanted to offer that. Like, I think we can raise that, but it doesn't prevent them from offering smaller programming.
Oh, heavens, no, no. I was just going with what Tim said, in that in their past experience, the maximum number that they've ever had is 25. So I'd go with the 25 number. And as you said, you know, they may only have 8 or 9 participants, and that's fine. But I don't want to, you know,
clarify, they might only offer a program that allows 10 people to sign up because that's the nature of the program. That was my point that I made.
That's perfectly allowable. It would be a maximum depending upon the program and their needs. You're right.
Okay,
so I would make the motion, you know, that as long as there isn't that 6-foot limit, somebody had mentioned that.
But I had mentioned it in terms of programmatically. If that is what people were comfortable with, it's hard to deliver a program to 15 people that are 6 feet, like, you know, more than 15 people that are 6 feet apart, because they are so spread out. Now, it was not in the plan. It was just a point that I was making.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it might have been helpful for you to have the plan in front of you for this conversation. I'm not sure if you do. So what I don't see making any sense, Barbara, is us approving the plan and then you trying to amend it after. I would be much more comfortable if the board could agree to a plan before we put the plan to a vote, because I don't want you to run the risk of voting yes on adopting the plan with a plan to amendment and then have your amendment not passing. You'd be like, well, I would have voted no. So I want to put a plan forth that all the board members will vote yes on, is the goal. So if you want to amend the plan, now is the time before we actually go to a vote on it.
Okay, I would like to amend the original, not the original plan, Vanessa's plan that was presented, to allow for a maximum of 25 attendees at an outdoor program.
Okay, Richard, you had a motion on the table that you wanted to adopt the plan with 2 amendments. Barbara wants to make a motion to amend that to also include maximum 25 people on outdoor programs. Do you accept that amendment?
I do not. And the reason I do not is because that is irrespective of the amount of room for the program. A program that's held in the small pavilion in Tower Center would be very different from the one that's held in the large pavilion at the top of Tower Center, which is a lot larger. So I think everything I've looked at from the CDC doesn't mention numbers, it mentions physical distancing, and that the amendment is irrespective of the size of the venue. So for that reason, I will not accept the amendment.
So currently the maximum in the plan for outdoor programs is 15.
Right.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
So with Richard's number of 100, I already said I'd be willing to support that. The only thing I would ask Richard, would he be willing to include something that Tim posted up in the chat about the numbers and with the spaces? And I think it's 214 is the occupancy for the current space that's going to be opened. When the full occupancy, or all the spaces are open, the occupancy goes over 800. Would you be willing to have it at 100 now, but then to be reassessed when the full library is open, when every area is open, so we're not stuck at that number of 100?
I would like to reassess it at a second meeting rather than do that tonight.
Right.
Vanessa?
I just want to clarify that the proposal, the amendment that Richard is proposing is tied to phases. So there are phases in the plan that the committee brought forward today that don't include headcounts. So I just want to make that clear. Like when the transmission rate falls, there are different continuity of services. So there could be a time, and again, to Richard's point, which I think is smart, we can reevaluate these stages at another time. I don't see in the foreseeable future us leaving the high transmission rate. But just to clarify, there are stages as presented and amended that would not require a head count.
Thank you.
Caitlin?
Yes.
I'm not sure, and I don't know where we have come up with the idea, and we have some lawyers on the board here that could answer this better than I, but any other organization that I've been in, when there's been a motion on the floor, anybody can make an amendment as long as it's seconded. That amendment is voted upon, and it doesn't matter unless they're doing things incorrectly, whether somebody else has a motion on the floor that's unrelated. So that's why I wanted things to be clear cut in the that, you'd put a motion on the floor like Vanessa had, that would be clear cut, that this is what was presented. We amend it with Richard's motion up and down, and then another motion comes, and then you vote on the entire thing. I mean, that's the way I've always seen things done. But as I said, I know we have at least three.
I'm sorry. I guess I was misunderstanding the order that you wanted to do things. I thought you wanted to vote on Richard's motion because Vanessa withdrew her motion. I thought you wanted to vote on Richard's motion and then vote on yours.
No.
And that was my understanding of what you wanted to happen. And
No,
I
I think
apologize if I got that wrong.
the cleanest way to do it is to have Vanessa's motion on the floor. It's open for discussion. Richard makes his motion.
Discussing it for an hour, so I'm not sure. But I see what you're saying. You want Vanessa's motion on the floor, and then Richard to amend it, and then you to amend it. And you think that's
Offer an amendment, correct? Right, because it has nothing to do with another person either accepting or not accepting your amendment to that motion. It's to the main motion. But again, I defer to the at least 4 lawyers that we have on the board. 5, I think. Mike, aren't you a lawyer too? So could we do it that way? Are people comfortable doing it that way or not?
It looks like Richard has Robert's Rules of Order out to look that up. But I will say I need to step away for just a minute or two. So I'm gonna have to put everybody on pause. But I'm very much open to however we get this done. But the point is that I think we're almost all in agreement, and I think we can get it done, and we need to. So I need to take a 2-minute break, but I will be right back.
Richard, did you find out the proper process?
It says in here that regardless of whether the person that makes a motion accepts the amendment or not, it needs to be debated and voted on.
So if I understand that correctly, we'd vote to then add Barb's amendment to your motion.
Let me read you what I think applies.
It doesn't go like that.
Yeah.
He would make the motion on the floor. We would vote for that. I would then make the motion that I'm proposing, and we vote on that. If nobody else makes any other motions, then we vote on the main motion, which is the Vanessa motion, you know, for the plan itself, and we're done.
I prefer it if we called it the committee proposed plan instead of the Vanessa plan, just.
The pandemic operations plan as presented
Right,
by the COVID Action Committee.
right.
Regardless of whether or not the maker of the main motion accepts the amendment, it must be open to debate and voted on formally unless adopted by unanimous consent and is handled under the same rules as amendments generally.
Thank you,
Says it
Richard.
needs to be voted on.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, so I think I agree that Barb, that what she's saying is a cleaner way of doing this. The issue is with having the committee proposal withdrawn and Rich's on the table. It means that we can't vote independently on Rich's amendment to it without voting on the entire plan all as a piece. And if we had the original proposal on the table, then we can vote for any amendments piecemeal separately before voting on the whole package with whatever amendments everyone has accepted.
All right.
I take back my withdrawal.
Can I say one more thing? It was mentioned a few minutes ago that the current capacity, the max on outdoor programs is 15 in the proposed plan. That's true for the lower severity levels, but at the current high level, there's a complete ban on all outdoor activities. So I think it's without some sort of amendment, we're saying that there can't be any outdoor programs right now. So I think that is something, if we want to allow outdoor programming at the current level, we need to make some amendment or address that in some way.
Okay, so here is what we are going to do. We're gonna have Vanessa put a motion back on the floor to accept the pandemic operations plan. Then we will have a second. Then Richard will make, not adopting the pandemic operations plan, but his two suggestions for compromise to 100 people and restrooms. And then we'll vote on Richard's amendment. And then Barbara will make an amendment and we will vote on Barbara's amendment. And then after amendments have been passed or not, we will go back to visiting the plan with whatever amendments have passed and go from there. That makes sense for everyone.
I think so. I'll do my best.
Okay. I'm not sure we need a lot more discussion. A whole bunch has been had, and I think we've reached some sort of compromises, at least on Richard's motion, and then we can keep working towards other amendments. So Vanessa, do you have a motion to adopt the pandemic operations plan as presented?
Why, yes, I do, Madam President. I move to, what is the verb? Vote on pass.
Either one.
The presented, it's not
pandemic
amended.
Operations plan.
Yeah, the presented revised pandemic operations plan.
I seconded that.
Second by Barbara. Great. Now, Richard, you'd like to make a motion.
I would like to move to amend the proposed pandemic operations plan to include a limit of 100 patrons browsing at any time, and that we have signage on the multi-person bathrooms encouraging them to use a single bathroom, but not prohibiting them from doing so.
Richard, can you just clarify in which level, low, moderate, substantial, or high, the limit of 100 people exists?
High.
High. Thank you. And does that also,
If I may, I think it's cleaner if it references 100 when it says head count. If we plugged 100 in all of those, if I understand you correctly, Richard.
That's fine. I don't have a problem doing that.
okay, so
Yeah.
we're building
So
head count, yes.
all phases of the plan, 100 in all phases of the plan.
including low transmission where there currently is not a building head count?
No.
No.
Moderate, substantial, and high have yeses, and
Correct.
those are 100. Got it. Okay. Are people ready to vote on Richard's amendment? I believe,
I seconded that, Caitlin.
and Barbara seconded it. Excellent. All right, so we're going to do a quick roll call on the amendment to the head count. Vanessa? Yes. Peter?
Favor.
Thank you, Peter. In favor. Kathy?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Tony?
Yeah.
Narina is a yes. I see her hand. Barbara? Yes. Caitlin? Yes. Marcia has a connection issue. Noreen?
Yes.
Yes. Marcia? Calling Marcia. Marcia is a did not vote. So that passes at 821. Thank you, Richard, for that amendment. Barbara, you'd like to make a motion to amend as well.
I'd like to make a motion to allow the staff at their discretion to have up to 25 people, depending upon their program, in attendance at an outdoor setting with people fully masked.
Is there a second?
And that's on the high level? Is that on the high level? Because right now there are no programs in the high level, correct?
Correct. That would be at, at all levels, other than the level where there is a very low tolerance or some transmission rate.
Marcia, I'm sorry. Not Marcia. Barbara, I'm sorry. Can you repeat again what your motion is? I didn't hear the first part.
Sure. I said that at the discretion of the staff, they would be allowed to have up to 25 people in attendance at an outdoor program with people, being masked, even in high transmission rates.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a second?
Caitlin, did you hear that? Second?
I did not. Okay, second by Peter.
Yep.
Thank you, Peter. All right. Would folks like to continue to have further discussion, or would the board like to move directly to a vote? Not seeing any hands for discussion. Okay. So to summarize, Barbara wants to amend the plan to have an outdoor programs capacity of 25. That changes the moderate from 15, the substantial from 15, and the high from 0 to 25.
And that is at the discretion of the staff, depending upon, as Richard pointed out.
Correct. It's a maximum. We understand it's a limit. There could be other times where they can reduce that as they need for space and program it, what they do.
Right.
Okay. So we will move to a vote on that motion by Barbara and seconded by Peter. Vanessa? Yes. Peter?
In favor.
Kathy?
Yes.
Richard?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
Tony?
Yeah.
Narina? Yes. Barbara? Yes. Caitlin? Yes. Marcia? Marcia? You're on mute.
Hear me, Caitlin?
I can now, yes.
Yeah, and by the way, I had my hand raised with the first vote, so it should be unanimous, but you didn't see it.
Great. Got
Okay.
it. Thank you. And is this also a yes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And Noreen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so one against, the rest are in favor, so that motion does pass at 8:25 p.m. Are there other motions to amend the plan as presented? No. Excellent. So the plan has been amended twice, and now we will vote on the plan, the new amended plan. Again, we'll just do a quick roll call. Vanessa? Yes. Peter?
In favor.
Kathy?
Yes.
Yes. Richard?
Yes.
Yes. Michael?
Oh.
Yes. Tony?
Oh.
Yes.
Yes. Narina? Yes. Barbara? Yes. Caitlin? Yes. Marcia?
Yes.
Yes. And Noreen?
Yes.
Yes. Unanimous. At 8:26 p.m., we have passed our new pandemic operations plan. Thank you all very much for working towards that compromise. All right. UHLS, Tony.
We had a meeting on Wednesday, September 8th, and there are two important items, both of which were just brought up in discussion by Tim Berg, but a lot of details were not provided. He expects to get details on which I can elaborate on these points at a later board meeting here. But I did want to bring these up because I think it's important for the board to be aware of these, as these will be discussed hopefully in the next couple months. But what he noted were two funding programs that are new, one at the federal level, part of President Biden's Build Back Better plan. And part of that $261 million will be allocated to New York State for the purpose of repairs and restorations to the libraries. The obvious question that I raised was, is that for prospective repairs, or can that amount, if Guilderland does get some of that money, can it be used to pay the expenses of the restoration that we incurred over the past few months? No detail was provided, so he wasn't able to elaborate, but his suspicion was that there would be a cutoff date somewhere, whether that's in the past and what options we would have to go back and reclaim money to put towards the construction costs, yet to be known. So I do have to report back to the board once I get information from Upper Hudson Library that would clarify that position. The other one is a smaller dollar amount. He did not have the dollar amount that would be allocated to the state, but it's a federal funding for digital enhancements. So building out digital infrastructure that the library can use to service the patrons. He explained this one as a one-shot payment, and it would be recommended that when it's received that the library utilize it as quickly as possible. The background behind that is that he believes that would be just, there'd be some constraints when you receive it. But again, he didn't elaborate the details on it, other than to say amounts for the overall program yet to be known, but he'll share it with the rest of the members of the Upper Hudson Library, and I'll communicate it to the board once it's known. And then hopefully some of that money can be used to apply to the functions that the library currently has in existence. It's not clear if it has to be used for new services or if we can use them to the media services that we currently have. But both items, hopefully I can report back to the board at a future date with the details to that. But other than that, the meeting was brief, but informative.
Thank you so much, Tony. I look forward to continuing to hear UHLS reports. All right, Tim Wiles, the directors and department heads reports.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I would like to propose that that I give you like 1 minute of some highlights and we go from there. You can all read the various departmental reports. There are a number, I'm going to just depart from my prepared remarks and say there are a number of people who are on the staff who are just doing fantastic creative work. In particular, Phil Berardi and Diane Bruins have come up with a plan to continue curbside that we expect to announce soon. Christina Ronald, just who you guys allowed us to elevate to an L2 position in charge of the collection a few months ago, just handled the collection move in an amazing way. I feel bad in singling out these people because they all had tons of cooperation from other people. when they did these things. Also, I'm not quite sure where in the concept that we are working with tomorrow is that this is a grand opening photo op. There's about a half an hour worth of speaking time slots. We expect that to happen in front of the building, but we note that there's an 80% chance of rain. Megan has suggested that if we need to move it inside, the new youth edition would be the best place, both in terms of being the most finished and having no construction activity in it tomorrow. Board members are obviously welcome, and I'm sure, I know that some of you are critical of our position on this, but for the entire week, it was impossible to move through the building safely, and that's why we haven't planned to give tours. I may be able to reassess that before noon tomorrow because the building is in pretty good shape right now. So maybe, I know Senator Hinchey wants a tour, and I would expect some folks would like to go along on that. If you're a board member who wants to go on the tour, I think maybe you should just wait until next week and we'll take you around. There is still a significant amount of activity, including potentially some drilling of concrete. So anyway, that's just where we're at today. Sorry, it changes minute to minute. So that's my report unless you want more.
A
No,
motion
thank
to
you,
accept
Tim.
the director's report.
All right, motion by Peter to accept the director's report. Is there a second? Noreen, I see your hand in the waiting. Noreen. All right, so I can't see everyone on camera at the moment, so I can't quite do a show of hands, but we'll go this way. If you are in favor of approving these reports, raise your hands. And Peter, yay or nay?
I'm in favor.
All right, then it is unanimous. Thank you. So that passes at 8:33. We've accepted the directors and department heads reports for August 21. Old business. Tim, do you want to do a very brief fine-free discussion and then provide us reading materials?
Sure. So it says on the agenda that I would prepare a presentation, and I did not have time to prepare a presentation. I do have some notes that I can, quickly read off. Also, I got an offer today from Natalie Herto, the assistant director at Upper Hudson. She goes to library boards and talks about fine free and is happy to do that with us at a later date if we want. Reading recommendations were already sent out, a list of 8 links that Margaret put together. And if people have had time to read those, I believe your plan, as stated to me, was to, have a presentation on it tonight and potentially move to a vote in October. Time is probably of the essence tonight. So I can read these notes to you quickly, or we can just move on and deal with it in October in any way you want.
Yeah, I would feel comfortable. I want the board to have time to digest a presentation. So I would feel more comfortable if we just push this on the agenda for a presentation in October with the idea that, we might vote on something in November.
Okay.
And if you cannot put together a presentation for October, which who knows what will be going on in the library at that point, but hopefully construction substantially done, please feel free to outsource that to Upper Hudson representative as well. Be happy to hear from an outside entity on the matter. And just have you, if they want to do the presentation and then you give your recommendations for our library specifically, we can plan for that for October and then, potentially moving it to a board vote in November. So that should work. Tim, the PPS part-time position.
Okay, so the PPS librarians or library department heads have requested what they call, not inaccurately, the restoration of a part-time position. Just prior to COVID, in late February or early March of 2020, we filled a full-time vacancy in their department. A librarian had departed to work at another library. And the person who filled that position was a part-time librarian in the department. We closed the library on March 13th of 2020, which I haven't looked at a calendar, but is almost certainly before the third Thursday of the month. And in addition to trying to figure out what was going on with COVID, you know, the whole board meeting was probably about COVID in March of 2020. We were going to propose in March of 2020 that we hire that part-time librarian in order to meet a need in the department, which is essentially to allow us to always have 2 librarians on duty nights and weekends. If we don't fill that part-time position, some librarians have to do more nights and weekends than others, which isn't particularly fair, but the overall department just runs better. Having 2 people available at each desk is really almost a minimum, but it is also our maximum that we are able to have. Now, they call it a restoration of a position, and it isn't necessarily accurate to view it that way because they did not ask for it when the budget was being developed in January, February, March of this year. And so therefore, Carol did not budget for it. There are some ways that money has been saved over the last few months of the current fiscal year, and this position would be approximately $17,000 a year. I don't want to misquote Carol Cott, but I know that we can find about half of that in savings that we identified. Frankly, we identified them 8 or 10 days ago, and I can't quite remember what they are. But we would be asking for 17,000 and change in spending when not all of that is in the budget line. Now, it gets more complicated because there is another department in the library, the Collection Services Department, where they have a full-time employee who has just left to take a part-time position elsewhere and is now working part-time at 2 different libraries. I have not had time to discuss with that department head what the needs will be going to the future. You know, I feel the need to fully disclose that to the board, that there may be a need to replace the 24 or so hours that have been lost in that department, which theoretically would be paid for by the fact that the person has departed. But I just don't think it would be fair to say to you, I would like to restore this position in one department and withhold the idea that there was probably going to be a request in the future from another department. In my personal view, neither would violate our pledge to the public that we would not be adding any new positions as a result of the renovation. Both of these, in one way or another, are trying to make up for hours that have been lost. The first one is complicated because they're lost over 2 different fiscal years. So that's the situation. My personal recommendation is that we fill the PPS part-time librarian. We do have one librarian in that department who has worked an extra night and weekend, so 2 weekends a month and 2 nights a week all year, and didn't even tell me, just did it because it's her job. I think it's appropriate to fill this position. But I did want to make you aware that I'll probably be talking to you about another position before the fiscal year is over. I just have not been able to meet with that department head and ask what her thoughts are going forward. But it's a small department and you don't lose 24 hours from it without needing to replace them in some way.
So Tim, from the board tonight, you're looking for a motion to fill?
I want to be very careful with the words because I used the word restore this part-time position in the Programming and Public Services Department. But that's technically not true, as Carol probably would tell you, because it essentially disappeared when a new budget was voted on that didn't have that position in it. However, we used to work with more people and now we work with less. And you know, the pandemic is really the cause. Like, if you're a department head, are you going to ask me and you to approve a position when the library has just closed and nobody knows when it's going to reopen? I wouldn't. So I think the department heads are acting in good faith. I think the complicating factor is that a year has gone by and the hours weren't built into the budget.
Michael.
Yeah, can you just clarify on these the night and weekend hours that we're talking about? What are the job responsibilities that this person would be doing during those times? What are the duties that we're needing to fill?
Sure. So reference librarians, I'm sure you're familiar, Mike, because we know you're a library user. We're talking about reference librarians. So we try to have 2 on the adult desk and 2 on the children's desk at all times. The one limitation on that is that there are, of course, mandated lunch breaks and 15-minute breaks. So we already have, you know, half hour here and 15 minutes there, where we're down to 1. I am a former reference librarian myself, and often you get involved in really detailed questions with somebody that might take a half an hour or so at a time. So the public often sees that there's only one person there because the other person is off somewhere helping somebody or on a lengthy phone call helping somebody. We've probably all had that experience of waiting at the desk. So they basically staff the reference desk and wait for questions from the public by phone, by email, or in person. They also, of course, kind of monitor the computer use of people that are using the public computers right near them, help people make photocopies, give directional assistance, technology assistance. And of course, they work like in between times when there's no patron asking them a question through any medium. They're like ordering books, or they have carts there with materials that they're putting through a formula for possible weeding, that sort of thing. So it's not simply passive waiting for questions. It's, you know, questions when questions occur, and then also other kinds of work, you know, maybe writing up minutes from a meeting or something in between the questions that that come from the public.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions for Tim on the PBS part-time position? Is there a motion to
You know, may I just add one other thing?
please?
You know, we are current, if we don't fill this, you know, we'll continue to look for volunteers from among the staff to do the nights and the weekends. But when you get to the one of every 4 weekends where you've got 3 people scheduled instead of 2, if one of those 3 people gets sick, then you've got only 2 librarians. You know, there's a backup role that's part of it as well.
Thanks, Tim. So you'd like us to approve a PPS part-time position at a cost of, what is the amount?
It's approximately 17,000. Let me tell you the hours that are requested. It's 12 hours a week with 1 week a month. That is 18 hours. That accommodates the weekend shift on that one time a month. So the average would be probably 14 or 15 hours. And Carol and Margaret and I sat down and took the entry level hourly salary of a librarian and multiplied it out and came up with about 17,000.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve opening a PBS part-time position for hire? Motion by Noreen, second by Marcia. Questions or discussion for the board? I don't see any hands. All right, we will go directly to a vote on this PBS part-time position. Vanessa? Yes. Peter? Peter?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Kathy? Yes. Richard?
Yes.
Yes. Michael? Yes. Tony?
Yeah. Yes.
Narina? Yes. Barbara? Yes, I see your hand. Caitlin? Yes. Marcia? Is having a connection issue. Noreen? Yes. Marcia?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. So unanimous at 8:46 p.m. We approved the opening of a PPS part-time position for Tim to hire.
Thank you.
You're welcome. New business. Tim, these are all you.
Yep, that's me. So the first item is the charging stations. The preface to it is they have been installed, but they are not yet operational. I believe, and the thing that I would say to you is, I have a lot of questions about charging stations that and you will too, that I cannot currently answer. I can't tell you how much it should cost per kilowatt hour, etc. All I'm hoping to get from you tonight is whether or not we want to charge our patrons for plugging in their electric cars at the charging stations. Beyond that, I'm not able to tell you the common practice, but I do have a recommendation, which I'd be happy to share maybe after some questions or discussion. That's your call, Caitlin. To me, the question comes down to, do we charge people or not to plug in?
Okay, Barbara, you have a hand?
Yes, I mean, I definitely think we should charge. It's just like the rest of us that drive gasoline cars, we have to pay for our thing. I don't think the taxpayers should be footing the bill for, people that would plug in, at the library, but that's just my point of view. I think that it should be a credit card or however they set it up, where they can charge.
It is done by credit card or by phone. You wave the card or the phone in front of the station. I do know that.
Other questions for
I think you can do it gratis for your patrons.
Do you have any idea of cost?
I don't, but I do know so far that I was talking to the director at Bethlehem today. They have charging stations, and this is not my recommendation, but this was his opinion. He believes personally, and I tend to agree, that it should be, if you're charging for it, it should be on a cost recovery basis rather than on a basically profit-making basis. Like he threw out the figure, let's say you charge 12 cents, or let's say you pay 12 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. He thinks you should be charging 12 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity.
What do other libraries do, Tim?
I do not know yet. They were just installed this week, and I don't have any paperwork on it yet, but I figured moving forward, I did not have the authority to either make them free or make them paid.
I see Vanessa and then Tony, Narina, Richard.
Do we have to decide tonight? I feel like I would like to support offering it gratis. I know a little bit about charging. The only thing that gives me pause is that it's probably like a time of service charge for the electricity, which it's cheapest at night when patrons aren't coming to the library. I think it could be a kind of a cool gesture to support those community members who are caring for our earth. And there might be some programs that would subsidize it, all of which I think take a little bit more investigation. And so I'm wondering if it's possible to do some more research and not, turn on the juice, so to speak, until we have more info and can make an informed decision.
My only response to that is I don't think you're being unreasonable in any way. It's just that they're sitting there, and they're a potential cause for criticism. Like maybe a slightly modified approach would be to turn them on for free pending research on what to do.
Sure, I could get behind that. I'm assuming that there's signage that requires this charging to occur while you're browsing the library.
Not really, although I assume we could theoretically turn them off at night to keep someone from just parking their car there all night and filling up. But there's just signage that indicates it's a charging station at this point.
Okay.
What did I say? Tony, then Narina? Or the other way? Tony?
All right, I'll go. I'm for doing it for free, and Vanessa kind of already asked, was that only to be charged when the library was on or open, or could they still be on overnight?
I believe they can go 24/7 probably.
Okay. Narina?
Yeah, I don't know anything about the charging stations, but, and I have no idea how much it would cost. Is there a way, if anyone knows, to determine, to insert your ID or something and to make it free for Guilderland residents only? I'm not sure if that's even an option. I have no idea how they work. It could be completely off.
I have no idea, but I suspect it's kind of like a gas pump in the sense that anyone who can pay can use it if it's being sold, you know. So sorry, don't know.
Okay, and then Richard.
We need more information. We need to know what the community standard is. And if you start making something free and then try to charge for it, these are also level 2 charging stations and they take a long time. So the probability of anybody coming there and leaving their vehicle overnight is pretty low, unlike the Tesla charging stations. So I think we need more information, even if it means keeping them closed for a period of time.
Caitlin, can I speak to?
Yes, please do, Peter.
I would recommend that we at least charge what it costs us. And then with Narina's point, I would absolutely agree with her. We would have to find a way to make sure that it's Guilderland residents or those who have access to our library who are using it. And I don't know how you do that either, but definitely something that we need to look at.
Richard.
Just Tim, 2 questions. Didn't NYSERDA pay for these or a portion of it? And if so, are we allowed to charge?
This is such a complicated question. It sounds so simple. We were assured that we were eligible for funding to get these installed, to get a reimbursement for the purchase price, which was approximately $14,000 total, and to pay for the installation. I dutifully went to the website and did the paperwork. Hadn't heard anything back just yet. Received an email within the last week that the program NYSERDA is running called Charge Ready New York has run out of funding, but that there are other programs that NYSERDA offers under which we might be eligible. So I probably counted chickens before they hatched in terms of the rebate or repayment. There may be another program that we can apply for, but my understanding, if we were getting the full payment, is that you're still dispensing an energy product, and you know, I think the owner just has the choice.
Tim,
You know,
I have to interrupt you and say that according to Megan, the charging units that have been installed are not capable of accepting payment.
never mind.
So yes,
That is, I would just say, and she's somebody's providing a link, but I would just say that that's not what I heard from the installing electrician. But he didn't have all the paperwork either. So, but that's a good question. Good if we're not capable. I go back to what Richard just said. We need a lot more information before we make a decision.
Tim, can I just ask one other question? Is it okay for us to differentiate our services to Guilderland and non-Guilderland residents?
A version of that question was brought up, I believe, at our July board meeting.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. It is. Our charter charters us to serve the patrons of Guilderland. We participate in I'm going to try to keep it short. We participate in a consortium that allows us to also serve patrons of any place in Albany or Rensselaer counties mutually. Lastly, we certainly allow in-person use of the library by people who live anywhere. And if they want to check material out, they have an option to pay an annual fee that ranges from 25 to 50, from zero, because we've waived it for senior citizens, veterans, et cetera, to $25 to as much as $50. The decision was made by the board. I came on board in 2014. I think it was around 2010 that the board decided that they were not going to give out library cards. And Barbara obviously would probably remember this, but my understanding is the board decided to start charging a fee for people who lived outside of the service area, which would be defined as Albany and Rensselaer counties, because they were basically using a taxpayer-funded resource but not funding it. And the fee, incidentally, is much less than you would pay. You know, like if you own a home in Guilderland, you're paying more than $50 a year for most Guilderland homes to use the library. So it's sort of an automatic discounted fee for people from out of the area.
Marcia.
Why don't we just leave them non-operative until we have more information? We don't know if you can charge. We don't know if it has to be for free. There are other places for people to charge their automobiles. So unless we have a full picture as to what it is, we cannot do restations. I think we defer this.
+15186 0.
I would agree we should defer this conversation. It's very clear there's still a lot of outstanding questions, particularly the first question of, are our charging stations capable of accepting payment? And if that question, the answer to that question is no, then that's a whole different discussion,
right,
going forward. Barbara?
In light of the fact that we may be paying for these two stations at $14,000 a piece.
No, total.
Oh, total.
Mhm.
You know, we really have to find a situation where we can possibly charge to recover our costs. And, you know, I would certainly only want to cover whatever our costs are, but I think it's really unfair to the general taxpayer base that, you know, first of all, we would have to pay for these things, and then, you know, then National Grid just gets automatic payment for, you know, people using this, and that we can't limit it to people that are, you know, just using our library at a library program or something. So I agree, set it aside and get a lot more information.
If anybody has specific questions that they would like answered, what I will do is, if you could send them to me, I will compile them in a document, and I will try and send one document to Tim with all of our questions compiled, if that works for everybody. So I will look to send that to Tim 2 weeks from now, October 7th. And that will give him then some time, give us 2 weeks to get our questions, and Tim about 2 weeks to get his responses ready for the October board meeting.
Meanwhile, I have questions of my own, which I'll begin working on.
Great. I'm sure there'll be some duplicates. So if folks could get me their questions, re-electric charging stations by October 7th, I'll consolidate a list to send to Tim to answer at the next board meeting. All right. So Tim, building insurance.
Okay, so I'm going to try to summarize this one, and I'll just remind Caitlin that she reminded me that Marcia has offered to help, and that Marcia's background is in insurance law. So our insurance broker is the Ten Eyck Group, Chris Broussard, and Chris was reviewing the building addition to update the insurance coverage probably 6 weeks ago. And there's a complicated history, which I'll just summarize by saying the current arrangement between the school district and the library is that the school district owns all of our land and all of our buildings. And the current insurance practice is that the school district insures the building itself and the library insures the content of the building. Contents, everything in the building, furniture, books, etc. And Chris Broussard recommends to both organizations, he happens to be the broker for both the school district and us, that the insurance be held by one party. The reason for that is that in the event of a claim, it could become much more complicated in his view if there are multiple claimants, plaintiffs over the insurance. So I discussed that with Chris Broussard, Margaret Garrett, Carol Cott, and I also took the liberty of discussing it with the school superintendent. And the school superintendent discussed it with the district office team on the school side. And my position was I preferred for the school district to be the sole party in charge of the insurance because they have a more robust administrative structure than we do. But their position was essentially the opposite. They believe we know more about the library and they think we're the right people to administer it. And they also kind of respectfully point out that there's not a whole lot of administering to do. The broker helps you manage the policy. So as a follow-up to their position, that is also, I'm kind of skimming, but that's also Chris Broussard's recommendation. He believes the library should be the party responsible for all insurance. I asked him as a follow-up question, isn't that weird that we're paying to insure it, but they own it? And he said, no, that's rather common. And, you know, theoretically, we could extend this discussion to ask the school district to, you know, sell us back our property for $1 or something like that. But that comes to mind when you have the discussion, but it is not necessary in order to resolve the situation. So Chris believes we should become the sole party insuring the building and its contents, and the unbudgeted hit for that, because the building is now a lot more valuable than the previous insurance policy, and the contents are also more valuable than the previous contents. He estimates at probably about $11.5 thousand per year. I believe all that is in the memo that I sent to you. So anyway. And there's not so much urgency, but it needs to get resolved or else the current situation needs to get extended. One or the other needs to happen, I think, before our next meeting.
Tim?
Yeah.
Why now? Why?
Because the building was just expanded. So in going through the building to make his annual review, he said, okay, you've got 20% more square footage. There's obviously a value to that. And by the way, this was his, by the way, but he had been in conversation with Megan Brennan, the architect, and noticed that I'll use the actual numbers. So the building was worth about $9 million, but was being insured for about $6 million. And so there was a lag in what was being renewed each year, even though the property was apparently growing in value. And then the new property is more valuable than the old.
Okay. What was the cost? I assume that in the past, the situation was that we paid, the school district insured the building, or we reimbursed them for the cost. And also we separately paid for the content.
We separately paid for the content. We did not reimburse the cost of the insurance.
So that the school board absorbed the cost of the building.
Yes.
So this is a considerable hit to the library.
Yeah, I think it's roughly 12,000.
Well, that's a considerable hit. Is the school district willing to reconsider?
I'm sure they'd be willing to meet about it.
Yeah,
But-
because I don't know Mr. Broussard, I do know Tenac, but he insures both.
Mhm.
And, I would just like to think about, I'm not suggesting he's not independent, but I'd like to understand what went into his thinking with respect to his recommendation. Is it an independent recommendation, or is he feeling that he has to adhere to what the school board?
I two things. I
So-
believe
As it stands, yep.
So I believe it's an independent recommendation, but he has also offered to meet with us. If you'd like to meet with him, and if any other board members, a committee perhaps would like to meet with him. And I'm sure the school district would be happy to meet with us about it.
Yeah, because I mean, that. Apparatus, but my question was, what's it going to cost the library? And the answer is, it's going to cost us $12,000 if the school board doesn't continue to insure the building.
Although you're right, of course, but the bottom line to the taxpayers of Guilderland is the same whether we pay it or they pay it, because it's all the same taxpayers.
And we are naming an additional insurer to the original policy, do you know?
I'm afraid you're breaking up so much that I don't
I know I'm having a lot of technical problems. I'd be willing to talk with you offline and
Okay.
sit down with Mr. Broussard and have a discussion.
Okay. Can we go with
And,
next week?
based on,
So,
yeah, I'll call you.
okay, thank you.
Can you hear
Okay.
me? I'm having technical
So in
problems
terms
with
of
my
the whole
sound.
board, Tim, in terms of the whole board, then we don't need a motion at this time. You're gonna work with Marcia and bring the board back some more information. And in lieu of some other arrangement, we'll continue to extend the current insurance.
Yep.
Thank you. This, Michael, be aware that this might mean some finance things have to be worked out with the committee in terms of rebudgeting, to just be aware of. So
I do want to comment that while I've only worked with 2 insurance brokers in my professional career, I'm extremely impressed by Chris, and the service that the organization gives is fantastic. Phone calls are returned within 15 minutes usually. And I know that Marcia didn't intend to say anything potentially bad about them.
Not at all.
Yeah, but there's, from my observation, they're a very top-notch Guilderland organization. We moved our business to them from one in another city because we wanted to bring it local. And we had recommendations that they were very good.
all right.
Yes, I have no
Great. So
problem
there's
with the agency at all. I know.
Thank you.
So 2 things from new business that have been brought up to the board that we're gonna go back, get more information on. So thank you, Marcia, for volunteering to help with that, your area of expertise. This is why having a diverse community board is really outstanding. So moving on then to agenda item J, minutes of the monthly board meeting from August 19th, 2021. Abstentions will be Michael, Tony, and Barbara.
Excuse me, before we leave new business, can I
Please,
bring up?
absolutely, yeah.
I want to bring something up. I learned about something, and I just wanted to clarify. I was listening to the most recent episode of the library's podcast, and Tim was on there discussing some of the issues related to the construction and reopening and everything. And it was something that I hadn't been aware of, and maybe I misunderstood, but there was a discussion of the teen room, the new teen space in the library. And from what I understood, it was that at least at certain times of the day that room was actually going to be restricted only to teens. It was only going to be limited to use by teens during those times. Is that correct?
Generally correct, Mike. And so I'll start with thank you for listening to the podcast. And the second thing I'll say is that is kind of an unresolved question because the teen center is designed to, accommodate and give teens a place to kind of call their own. But there are many hours of the day, Monday through Friday, when teens are in school. And so the space theoretically could be used by others. And my gut reaction, even though I haven't had time to look into that, is that we would probably have the door to the room open Monday through Friday from 9:30 when we open until approximately 3 when teens become theoretically available to go to the library, and then just kind of pop in and ask any adults using it to go ahead and leave so that it can become teen-only space. It does happen to be located right between the two reference desks, so the librarians will just know if there's, some person using the teen room at 3 o'clock who should probably be asked to find another seat in the library.
So the one concern I had with that was, as I understand it, that room is where we're housing our young adult collection in the library. And my understanding is that despite the stated target audience that actually, and I don't know if this is true for our library in particular, but the majority of readers of young adult books are actually adults, and actually the over 30 demographic are large consumers of those books. So I worry that we'd be effectively excluding a large portion of our population that actually consumes those books, excluding them from access to that part of the collection. And also, I'm not sure if the YA graphic novels, comic books, whatever, if those are also being located in that room, but the readership for those also tends to skew older. And
Yep.
so my concern is that we're excluding, that portion of the collection is going to be inaccessible to a large, portion of our audience.
Okay, so taking some little pieces there, some of the graphic novels and so forth are currently stored elsewhere, and are planned to be stored elsewhere or available elsewhere in the library. But you are correct that the YA collection in general is in that room. And you're also correct that many adults like to read YA books. And so I think you're raising a very good point that we need to look into. So I guess I would suggest that I chat with our teen librarian and find out if she knows what the best practices are, and that we have a potential issue to resolve, which obviously we can't resolve before Monday. But I had heard no plans of locking it up during the business day or anything like that. So I think if it's okay with you all, I think Mike's raising a great question, and we need to maybe have that on the agenda for next month. And just keep it open until then,
I think that's excellent, Tim. I think at this point, we need to hear recommendations from the librarians who staff that area and generally work with teens, and maybe get some circulation numbers. Just on the young adult collection, I'm sure that your staff have made decisions based on their expert knowledge of being librarians. So I think that it's I think Mike brings up some good points on what we intended the space to be and the realities of the use of it. And I think we need to sort of rectify those two things. But I'm not sure it's a decision that the board needs to make, but I think the board would like to hear what the librarians have come up with to sort of resolve the idea of the teen room and the reality of that space and accessing the collections that are housed there.
Mm-hmm. If it's theoretically not something you want to vote on, what I could do is try to get an email back to the board within a week or two that presents what we are thinking we would do for your information and, if necessary, approval.
I think that satisfies. Michael, does that satisfy your concerns?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. You know, I don't know necessarily if this is something we need to vote on, or, you know, whether that's, you know, micromanaging to too much of a degree, but I do think, you know, the potential that, you know, part of our collection is going to be, you know, rendered inaccessible to many of our patrons is at least something that we ought to, you know, think about and you know, see if we're comfortable with, you know, how it's being done. That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to use as an analog, like the children's department is open to everybody, you know, like if you or me, Mike, wants to go in and take out a children's biography of somebody, we can do that. And so it seems like we should be able to check out any book in the library.
Yeah, and
Browse it.
as I, you know, I'm looking at this from a parent perspective, and I have, you know, browsed the YA books looking for something for my kids who are in that age range to read, and looking for something on the shelf, not with a particular title in mind, but looking for something that strikes me as, oh, they might be interested in this. Let me bring it home and, you know, see if they want to read it. So I'm sure I'm not the only parent.
And I'm not trying to be silly, but you're a good parent. And I think another thing that people do is that YA books are often, you know, the total word count is maybe a little lower, the total length is a little shorter, and a lot of the novels deal with very cutting edge concerns that people in society are very interested in right now. So I think a lot of adults read young adult books because they can read more books in the same amount of time by scaling down from the adult reading level.
All right. So again, Tim, thank you for going and getting information and bringing it back to the board. Continuing to serve as an excellent liaison between board and staff.
Thank you.
So is there other new business, or are we ready to move to?
I think I'm going to reserve it. I have some additional thoughts about the pandemic operations plan moving forward, but I think maybe I'll try and raise that with the committee rather than wasting people's time tonight. So I'm done.
All right, thank you, Michael. And I appreciate that. All right, so the meeting minutes from the monthly business meeting from August 19th. Our abstentions are Michael, Tony, and Barbara.
Move to approve.
Richard makes a motion to approve the,
I'll
and second by, I see a lot of them, but I heard Peter first. All in favor, hands? And Peter?
In favor.
Excellent, thank you. So Vanessa, Peter, Kathy, Richard, Narina, Kate, Marcia, and Noreen are all yeses. Abstentions by Michael, Tony, and Barbara, and the motion passes at 9:19 p.m. Thank you all very much for that. Luann, is there more public input?
I don't have any further public input tonight.
Thank you, Luann. All right. Tim, personnel actions.
Okay, we have two personnel actions. One is to approve the retirement of Margaret Garrett, full-time assistant director in the administration department, effective October 19th of 2021. Side note, that is 2 days before the October board meeting. So Margaret attended the last board meeting that she had to tonight. The second is to approve the resignation. Oh, actually, it says it's the retirement of Carol Cott, full-time fiscal officer 1 in the administration department, effective October 19th, 2021. At some point, if there's comment, I would like to make a comment, but those are the resolutions.
Is there a motion to approve the resolutions as presented?
Yep.
Motion by Noreen, second by Kathy. All right, Tim, do you want to discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say, without pointing a finger at anyone in this meeting, that I've been a librarian since 1990, 31 years. Margaret Garrett has been a librarian at this library several years longer than that. There is no one person in the history of the library who has given more to this operation and has shaped it more than Margaret Garrett. And as I said in my email to the board when I first announced that Margaret was retiring and that Carol was retiring as well, these two people are both the best people who have ever been in their positions at the Guilderland Public Library. And so I find it unfortunate that an anonymous staff member chose to critique their performance on essentially the final night of their library careers. I think that needs to be reckoned with on a staff level. I think there may even be some legal liability that the person who wrote the letter may be happy that they wrote it anonymously, because it may amount to slander. And I just find it extremely unfortunate that the last official night of a person's career ended this way. I can tell you that I know that Margaret left the meeting, and I know Margaret well enough to know that that was hard to take. And I would like to commend Carol Cott for her professionalism in making an opposite decision. Not that Margaret is not professional, but Carol hung in there as well, despite the fact that her performance was not enjoyed or not celebrated by the person writing the letter. I'm just terribly upset by the whole thing, and I don't know what to do. I can say that both Margaret and Carol have offered in the past to stay on for a few extra, on an hourly basis for a few extra weeks, maybe even a month or two, to help us process payroll until such time as the replacements are hired. And I'm not sure that if I was Margaret or Carol that I would still be making that offer after tonight.
Thank you, Tim. Barbara.
I just want to reiterate what Tim said. I've been on this board a long time, and the two best people we have ever had in that position are Margaret and Carol. Talk about dedication, attention to detail. They are just fantastic, and they're going to be a great loss to the library. And I was going to ask before this happened if they would be willing to help train the new person that's coming on board, because it's a gargantuan task that both of them do. And to have somebody dropped into that slot without the prior person, helping with the training and, what is necessary would be a monumental task for those two new individuals. So again, this perhaps points to us re-examining public reading of anonymous letters. If somebody doesn't want to put their name to something, then it shouldn't be read publicly. It should be dealt with privately. And I would hope that we would take this up, perhaps in a policy committee meeting or something, because most organizations do not read anonymous letters in a public fashion, but they deal with them, privately, administratively. So, this may have been a hard lesson to take, but I think we do have to take it under advisement.
So it is unfortunate that did happen in that way, and I was unaware that all of the board members had received the letters. And for me, when I get a letter at my home addressed to the Board of Trustees on the night of a board meeting, it's my understanding that it was intended, the sender intended for me to read that letter in the board meeting. And my experience with Margaret and Carol, working with them as a board member, has been nothing but positive. And so, you know, Barbara, I can see your point, but I would like to focus on the motion on the floor, which is unfortunately to accept these retirements rather than use it as an opportunity to make a platform on anonymous comments. I think this board has voted on that, and we can rediscuss it and rehash it out in policy if necessary, but that would be up to the policy committee chair if they wanted to do so.
One more thing to add, Caitlin. Like on the school board, if somebody wants a
Barbara,
statement read,
let's focus on.
We want it read publicly. And in this case, I received a letter. They didn't say anything about it being read publicly.
Okay, so again, and that must be my mistake to have done so. I had assumed it was submitted to me for public comment and that to the Board of Trustees, and they did not feel like they could do that through the library and the staff there itself. You know, the motion that is on the floor is the retirements of Margaret and Carol. And while I, you know, don't necessarily want to accept them, it would be entirely selfish not to do so. They've served the Guilderland Library, and they have certainly helped this board in ways that are just unfathomable and untangible. If there's no more discussion on these retirements, I would like the board to move to a vote on them. All in favor of accepting the personnel actions as presented? I can see hands. Peter?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, so it is everyone else's hands and a yes from Peter, so that is unanimous at 9:27 p.m.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? I see Narina. All in favor? Adjournment. All right, unanimous at 9:27 p.m. The motion is adjourned. Thank you all very much